Chapter 1651. The principal's office was not far from the special enrollment dormitory. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the principal's office after a short walk. Knock knock. Gong Xiaoqing stepped forward and knocked on the door. Among all of them, Gong Xiaoqing was the most familiar with the principal. Gotcha. The door was directly opened. Ren Tianxiong personally opened the door. After seeing Gong Xiaoqing and the others, his kind and dignified face suddenly showed a happy smile. Welcome back, Principal. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others respectfully bowed. Their faces were full of smiles. At this moment, Ren Tianxiong did not dare to accept Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' salute. This was because after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came back from the assessment, their status was different from before. We have been waiting for you for a long time. Come in quickly. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked into the room, they found that the vice principal, Huan Qiu, Lu Huayan and Fu Hongba were all in the room. Looking at this appearance, it was obvious that they were waiting for them. Seeing this scene, the smiles on everyone's faces deepened a little. After seeing Di Beichen, Ren Tianxiong and the others all saluted Di Beichen and said, "Greetings to the young sect master." Although they were the principals and teachers of the Azure Water School, standing in front of the young sect master of the Tiangang sect, they were simply not enough. The young sect master had a noble status. Anyone who saw him had to salute. Since I came to the Azure Water School, I am a student of the Azure Water School. You are my principals and teachers. How can you salute me? Di Beichen said aloud. With his status, except for the various sect masters and aristocratic family heads, everyone who saw him had to salute. But he was once a student of the Azure Water School. Naturally, he would not accept the salutes of Ren Tianxiong and the others. Yes, Beichen is right, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Seeing Di Beichen's gentle expression, Ren Tianxiong and the others exchanged glances before returning to their original attitudes. From the beginning to the end, Di Beichen didn't want to be a student of the Azure Water School. Di Beichen came to the Azure Water School for Bailey Hongzhuang. They were well aware of this. They didn't dare to say that Di Beichen was a student of their school. The dignified Tiangang sect's young lord was a student of their school? Even if they spread the news, no one would believe them. They would only be laughed at. They also didn't expect that Di Beichen would come back with Bailey Hongzhuang. It seemed that Di Beichen really liked Bailey Hongzhuang. We are so happy to see you all back safely. Huan Qiu's face was filled with a kind smile. When Gong Xiaoqing and the others left, they were very worried. They heard from Cui Haoyan that they went to participate in the exam. As the vice principal of the Azure Water School, he had seen a lot of things. He naturally knew the risks of participating in the exam. What's more, Qingyue had been asking him about this. Now that he saw everyone come back safely, he was finally relieved. Lu Huayan and Fu Hongbo's faces were also full of joy. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were students they were proud of. Now that they saw them come back safely as mentors, they also felt very proud. Sit, Lu Huayan quickly said. Chapter 1652. After not seeing you for 2 years, you guys have matured a lot. Lu Huayan sized up Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. When he first recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they were still very immature. After 2 years of the assessment competition, that immaturity had gradually faded. Just by looking at their changes, Lu Huayan could understand how much they had experienced during the assessment competition. In comparison, Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng had also worked very hard during these 2 years. However, their changes were not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Dong Fengyu chuckled. Participating in the assessment competition, it is very difficult to not mature. People would always grow, especially when they were in a difficult situation. The assessment competition was a difficult situation for them. After 2 whole years, they went from being careful at every step to being feared by others. Not only did their bodies grow stronger, their hearts also grew stronger. Hearing Dong Fengyu's words, Huan Qiu and the others smiled and nodded. Although they had not participated in the assessment competition, they had a certain understanding and knew that Dong Fengyu was telling the truth. Fu Hongba sized up Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, his eyes revealing a bit of surprise. I see that your strength has increased a lot. Thinking back, he could see through Gong Xiaoqing and the others' strength with a single glance. But now he could not see it clearly. He could only feel that their auras were much stronger. The elemental energy in the assessment competition is very dense, comparable to twice the outside world. Therefore, we have improved a lot in these 2 years. Gong Xiaoqing said with a smile. Cultivating in the pocket world for 2 years was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for 4 years. Naturally, their improvement was greater than ordinary cultivators. What's more, the various things they had experienced had also increased their strength, so their improvement was greater. When Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng heard this, their eyes were filled with envy. When they first went to Tiangang sect, they found that the Yuan power in Tiangang sect was extremely rich and felt that it was a suitable place for cultivation. They did not expect the elemental energy in the pocket world to be so dense. No wonder Gong Xiaoqing and the other strength increased so quickly. Thinking back, Cui Haoyan and Gong Xiaoqing's strength was not too different. Sometimes they could even compete. However, now Cui Haoyan already knew the gap between them just by feeling Gong Xiaoqing's aura. In 2 years, he had been left far behind by Gong Xiaoqing. He could not catch up at all. Not only Cui Haoyan but Zhang Yunfeng also felt it very obvious. At that time, Xia Jiqing's cultivation was not as strong as hers, but now Xia Jiqing's strength was much stronger than hers, not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came back, she did not ask them how their cultivation had improved, because she did not want to take too big of a shock. Before, Lu Qingyue had already told her that regardless of whether a cultivator could achieve results in the assessment competition, as long as they could come back alive from there would be a great improvement. Obviously, everyone's improvement are joining. Ren Tianxiong thought for a moment and hesitated for a moment before he asked the question he wanted to ask. Chapter 1653. Although he knew that the possibility was small, Ren Tianxiong still decided to ask. At the very least, he could confirm a conclusion. We have all joined Tiangang sect. Gong Xiaoqing replied respectfully. Ren Tianxiong and the rest were stunned for a moment and looked at Gong Xiaoqing and the rest in surprise. Logically speaking, it was extremely difficult to join a sect. In fact, they didn't have much hope at all. However, Gong Xiaoqing's extremely natural answer shocked them. Join Tiangang sect? And all of them joined? How was that possible? Ren Tianxiong and the rest felt that it was impossible, but Gong Xiaoqing did not seem to have any reason to lie. As a result, they really couldn't understand what was going on. They did not participate in the assessment competition, but they knew that only cultivators in the top 100 could join the top 10 sections. How many dynasties were there in the Shangxian continent? The number of cultivators was even more shocking. Only the geniuses among geniuses could become one of the top 100. Yet, Gong Xiaoqing said that all of them had joined? Ren Tianxiong and the rest could not help but look at Di Beichen. Perhaps it was because Di Beichen was the young sect master of Tiangang sect that Gong Xiaoqing and the rest could become a member of Tiangang sect. Even so, it was still something to be happy about. As long as they became a member of the sect, their future path would be smoother and further than other cultivators. Noticing Ren Tianxiong and the rest's gaze, Gong Xiaoqing immediately knew what they were thinking. He smiled and said, "This has nothing to do with me. They relied on their own strength to reach this step." As Di Beichen's voice fell, the eyes of Ren Tianxiong and the others were filled with deep shock. Di Beichen's words could not be false. However, Tiangang sect was one of the top 10 sections. Other than cultivators in the top 100, it was impossible for others to join. Did this mean that Gong Xiaoqing and the rest were in the top 100? Ren Tianxiong, Huan Qiyu, and the others looked at each other in disbelief. The possibility was too small. You guys are in the top 100? Huan Qiyu couldn't help but ask. At such a time, even he was feeling somewhat nervous. If Gong Xiaoqing and the rest really made it to the top 100 list, it would be too amazing. Yeah, we're all in the top 100. Dong Fengyu's handsome and elegant face was filled with a happy smile. His pair of peach blossom eyes were overflowing with happiness. He didn't find it strange that the principal and vice principal were so surprised. In fact, it wasn't just the principal who found it strange. Sometimes, when he thought about it, even he himself found it unbelievable. As soon as he said this, the principal's office was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Ren Tianxiong, Huanchu, Lu Huayan, and Fu Hongba looked at Dong Fengyu's group as if they were looking at a freak. This news really shocked them. They had never thought of such a possibility, not even in their dreams. Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng were also dumbfounded. They didn't ask about this yesterday because they thought it was almost impossible. As long as Gong Xiaoqing and the others were able to return safely, it was enough to make everyone happy. Bringing up this topic would only make everyone feel uncomfortable. Chapter 1654. Gong Xiaoqing and the others were all on the top 100 list. All of them were on the list. This kind of thing was impossible even in a large empire's team. Gong Xiaoqing and the others had simply created a miracle. What is your rank? Huan Qiu couldn't help but ask. Everyone had made it to the top 100. This result was really a pleasant surprise. When Huan Qiu asked the question, Ren Tianxiong couldn't help but pick up his teacup. The news just now really gave him a big surprise. He had to suppress his shock. My rank is the last, I'm 30th. Xia Jiqing took the lead to speak, her face filled with a faint and happy smile. The difference in points between the four of them was not big. In their team, her cultivation was the lowest, so it was normal for her rank to be the last. However, when Xia Jiqing said this, Ren Tianxiong, who was drinking tea, couldn't help but spit out the tea in his mouth. Cough cough. Ren Tianxiong coughed, but he didn't care about the mess on the ground. His eyes were fixed on Xia Jiqing. 30th? And last? Huan Qiu and the others were also dumbfounded. They stared at Xia Jiqing and the others, their hearts filled with horror. Originally, they only thought that Gong Xiaoqing and the others could be ranked in the 90s, which was already very good. If they could be ranked in the 80s, it would really be a great result. They didn't think that Xia Jiqing would say 30th. This really shocked them and they couldn't believe it was true. 30th? Lu Huayan couldn't help but ask again, wondering if Xia Jiqing had said something wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and confirmed her answer. Yes. I'm 29th. Bai Junyu followed. I'm 28th. Dong Fengyu smiled. Gong Xiaoqing also followed. I'm 27th. Hearing Gong Xiaoqing and the others' rankings, Huan Qiu and the others were even more surprised. It was really rare to see their rankings so close. Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng's hearts were filled with envy. If they had participated in the assessment with Gong Xiaoqing and the others, then they would be proud of them now. The cultivators of Tiangang sect. This identity was enough to make all cultivators envious. From then on, their lives would take two completely different paths. It could be said that the difference between heaven and earth was like that between the clouds and the mud. Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng felt bitter in their hearts. If they had given it their all back then, they would have definitely been able to participate in the assessment with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, after they understood the brutality of the great examination competition, they panicked. They were afraid that they would not be able to return after participating in the great examination competition. It was precisely because of that trace of fear that they did not persist in the assessment array. And now they were regretting it. Zhang Yunfeng looked at Xia Jiqing with envy. In fact, she was stronger than Xia Jiqing at that time, but she didn't succeed. All of this was because Xia Jiqing had a fearless heart. From the beginning to the end, Xia Jiqing never thought of retreating, but she was not as fearless as Xia Jiqing. However, no matter how envious they were, it was useless. The assessment competition had ended, and everything had been settled. Chapter 1655. Thinking about it, this gap was already a gap that could not be crossed, and it would be impossible to catch up in the future. Why are your points so close? Fu Hongba was puzzled. Logically speaking, it was impossible for their points to be so close. Dong Fengyu smiled. Whenever we get points from other cultivators, we split them equally. That's why our rankings are so close. In addition to the points they got, they usually hunted monster beasts together. Although the number of monster beasts they hunted was different, the gap between their points would not be too big. It was because of this that their rankings were so close. Listening to Dong Fengyu's words, Fu Hongba and the others understood. However, after knowing that Dong Fengyu and the others got points all the way, they were also amazed. They were very clear that in their eyes, the strength of Gong Xiaoqing's group was naturally very good, but in the entire Shangxian continent, it was incomparable. They never thought that Gong Xiaoqing and the others could get such a result, and they felt extremely proud. Saying this, Ren Tianxiong and the others couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Gong Xiaoqing and the others had already said their rankings. Only Bailey Hongzhuang had not said anything. Bailey Hongzhuang, you are 26? Lu Huayan asked aloud. Since Xia Jiqing's ranking was the last and Gong Xiaoqing and the others' rankings were connected, then Bailey Hongzhuang could only be in front and not behind. Thinking about it, she should be 26. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to speak, Xia Jiqing's voice had already sounded. Boss is not 26th, she is first. Although it was not her own result, Xia Jiqing was also proud of Bailey Hongzhuang. Such a result was enough to move anyone. Quang Dang. The teacup in Ren Tianxiong's hand fell to the ground. His hands were faintly trembling, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. None of the things that had happened before could be compared to this. This was too unbelievable. Not only Ren Tianxiong, but Huan Qiyu and the others were also stunned. First place? That was a result they didn't even dare to think about. The person in front of them was actually the champion of the assessment competition. Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This result was simply amazing. In such an intense environment like the assessment competition, Hongzhuang was actually able to achieve such results. It was really amazing. You are the champion of the assessment? Ren Tianxiong stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. He had never thought that one day a student from the Azure Water School would be the champion of the examination. This was the greatest wish of all the principals, but it had never been fulfilled. He never thought that his wish would come true this time, and it was completely beyond his expectations. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes. After getting Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, Ren Tianxiong couldn't help but laugh. Haha, good. Sure. Such a result was definitely the best result ever achieved by a student of the Azure Water School. This is too shocking. You are really amazing. Lu Huayan and Fu Hongba looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a completely different gaze. Now they could no longer be Bailey Hongzhuang's mentor. They were afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang could already be their mentor. Chapter 1656. Principal, we came back this time to tell you the good news. Xia Jiqing's face was filled with a happy smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Previously, the Kanglin College withdrew from the 3 major colleges and was excluded. Now this situation can be changed. The reason why they came back was that they wanted to change the situation of the Kanglin College. At the beginning, when they participated in the college tournament, they were oppressed by the Qing dynasty. If the college chose to listen to the Qing dynasty, then Bailey Hongzhuang would never come back. However, whether it was the vice principal or the mentor, they stood on their side and always protected the students. Even if they were enemies with the other 2 colleges and the enrollment was not small, the principal never had the slightest dissatisfaction. Just this point alone was enough to make them feel touched. So they came back. At the beginning, the college was affected because of them, and now they hoped that the college would become brilliant again because of them. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ren Tianxiong and Huan Qiyou's faces changed. They were very clear about the meaning of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others wanted to help the Kanglin College rebuild its glory. As Bailey Hongzhuang said, as long as the news of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others on the top 100 list was released, it would definitely attract a large number of talented cultivators. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang was the first in the top 100 list. What kind of achievement was this? Just this point alone, Lingyin College and Beihai College could no longer suppress them, because they simply could not suppress them. Lu Huayan and Fu Hongba's faces could not help but show a touch of excitement. In the past 2 years they had been extremely aggrieved when they were recruiting. Before, the situation of the Kanglin College's enrollment was better, but since they withdrew from the 3 major colleges, all kinds of unfavorable news continued to come. Most of the outstanding students were recruited by Lingyin College and Beihai College. As a result, the results of the Kanglin College in the past 2 years were not as good as before. What was even more infuriating was that Lingyin College and Beihai College had not only gone too far, they were even mocking them in the market. Now that they heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, it was as if they could see the day they could hold their heads high. How could they not be excited? Ren Tianxiong and Huan Qiyou's gazes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Back then, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was an extraordinary woman. However, they had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would do such a thing for the college. In this world, there were many ungrateful cultivators. What's more, when Bailey Hongzhuang encountered that kind of danger in the college tournament, it was all for the sake of the college. It was their duty to protect Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had come to help them after achieving such great results, how could they not be moved? At least, there were not many cultivators in the world who could do such a thing. Lingyin College and Beihai College have become more and more excessive in the past 2 years. Especially Lingyin College, they have always suppressed us in the open and in the dark. They are extremely hateful. Cui Haoyan's face was full of anger. In the past 2 years he had felt it particularly obvious. He had wanted to fight back for a long time, but he had never had a chance. He could only endure it. Chapter 1657. Listening to Cui Haoyan's words, the faces of Gong Shaoqing and the others turned cold. When they first participated in the college tournament, they did not have a good impression of Lingyin College. They did not expect Lingyin College to be so excessive in these 2 years. This time they wanted to see how arrogant Lingyin College would be. Lingyin College is usually so arrogant. The members of the royal family of the Qing dynasty that they are most proud of have all fallen. This time, I am afraid they will not be able to do anything. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was slightly cold. She was extremely disgusted with Lingyin College and the royal family of the Qing dynasty. Yes, those guys thought they were so great, but in the end they were just looking for their own deaths. Xia Jiqing sneered. When she thought of Nangong Yu'er and the others threatening them in the assessment and finally losing their lives, she felt extremely ridiculous. Speaking of which, if they did not seek death, they would not die. Listening to the words of Gong Shaoqing and the others, the eyes of the principal and the mentor also changed a little. Looking at the situation, there was a hidden meaning in their words. Did you meet the cultivators of the Qing dynasty during the assessment? Zhan Yunfeng could not help but ask. She was extremely disgusted with the cultivators of the Qing dynasty. If there was a chance, she would not hesitate to send them all to hell. It was just that she could not do this with her strength, so she could only think about it in her heart. We met them. They took the initiative to find trouble with us. They wanted to threaten us so that they could kill us all. But the final result was completely different from what they thought. They were all killed by us. Xia Jiqing smiled and nodded. Her expression was a little proud. When she thought of the stupid things that Nangong Yu'er and the others had done before, she felt ridiculous. They had tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice used to lure it. As soon as these words came out, Zhan Yunfeng and Cui Haoyan once again took a breath of cold air. They did not expect everyone to be so domineering in the assessment, directly killing these enemies. Great! Cui Haoyan's eyes were bright. He felt that he had finally vented his anger and was extremely happy. Presumably, Lingyin College will not feel good after knowing this result. I want to see what results they can use to be arrogant now. When they thought of what Lingyin College had done in the past 2 years, the more proud they were before, the more painful it was now. He was more and more looking forward to the performance of Lingyin College after knowing the results of Hongzhuang. Lu Huayan and Fu Hongba also smiled. It's indeed satisfying. In the past, they were often angered by Lingyin College and Beihai College. Since the college tournament, the situation had become more and more serious. The two of them had endured it for a long time. Now that they knew that the proud student of Lingyin College had died in the exam, and at the hands of their students, they felt very happy. After saying this, Lu Huayan and Fu Hongba couldn't help but look at the two principals. Although these were their heartfelt words, it seemed a little inappropriate to say it in front of the principal. Ren Tianxiong and Huan Qiyu's gazes landed on Lu Huayan and Huan Qiyu. Just when Lu Huayan and Huan Qiyu were thinking about what to say, Ren Tianxiong and Huan Qiyu's words shocked everyone. Well done! Ren Tianxiong slapped the table. Chapter 1658. Ren Tianxiong's face was full of joy. Jian Qingqiu has been so arrogant all these years. Now we can finally hold our heads up high. When everyone saw Ren Tianxiong so happy, they were stunned for a moment, and then they all laughed. It seemed that the principal's thoughts were the same as theirs. In fact, Ren Tianxiong's anger towards the two colleges was deeper than Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. because they had been holding a grudge for a long time. As early as when Jian Qingqiu held the inter-academy competition, Jian Qingqiu had coerced him time and time again, which made him extremely unhappy. After that, Jian Qingqiu actually did something so excessive in the last inter-academy competition. It was simply unforgivable. From the beginning to the end, he had agreed with Huan Qiyou's decision to withdraw from the 3 colleges. Instead of being associated with Lingying College and Beihai College, which only cared about fame and fortune, it was better to withdraw and stick to their own way. For him, fame and fortune were not the most important. Completing the original intention of the principal to establish the college was the most important. Over the years, he had been holding back his anger for a long time, but he had been unable to defeat Lingying College, so he could only endure it. Now, his students had defeated the students that Jian Qingqiu was proud of. He had won this round. The atmosphere in the principal's office became extremely lively. After confirming what to do next, the principal and the tutor asked everyone about their experiences in the assessment tournament. At noon, Ren Tianxiong insisted on inviting everyone to eat together. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not refuse, so they went together. When the students of Kanglin College saw that the principal and the vice principal had invited the special enrollment students to eat, their expressions could not help but change a little. The principal actually invited Gong Senpai and the others to eat. This is too surprising. I have been in the college for so long, but I have never seen the principal and the students eat together. I don't know what kind of great achievements Gong Senpai and the others have to make the 2 principals and the tutor have lunch with them. The students were surprised. For them, the tutor was relatively easy to get close to, but the principal was difficult to see. The vice principal was almost always in the Alchemist's Guild. As long as there were no special things, they would not see the vice principal at all. As for the whereabouts of the principal, they were even more elusive. Apart from seeing the principal when they first arrived, they had almost never seen him. They could not even talk, let alone eat together. In the afternoon, a piece of news quickly swept the entire college and even Kanglin City. The entire Kanglin City was in a sensation, and everyone was talking about the news. Have you heard? The special enrollment students who participated in the assessment tournament were actually in the top 100. I have heard of it. Who doesn't know this news? They are already disciples of Tiangang Zong. Oh my god, this is really amazing. Someone from our academy actually became a disciple of Tiangang sect. And there are as many as 5 of them. Now I have the capital to brag when I go back. I saw the disciples of Tiangang sect with my own eyes. The group of students who did not understand why the principal and tutors treated the cultivators of the special admissions class differently now completely understood. With such an impressive identity, it was only right for the principal to treat them this way. Chapter 1659. Lingying College. Jian Qingqiu's face was ugly to the extreme. Since the 2-year period was up, he had been waiting for Nangong Yu and the others to come back. He believed that with the existence of Wei Junjie, ordinary cultivators would not be his opponent at all. As everyone knew, the strength of a poison master was far beyond that of an ordinary cultivator. All kinds of powerful poisons were enough to make it impossible for cultivators to guard against them. Even though the cultivators who participated in the assessment were all genius cultivators of various dynasties, there were very few poison masters. Even in a dynasty, it was rare to meet a poison master. He believed that with Wei Junjie and the team, the Qingxiao dynasty would be able to achieve excellent results this time. Once Nangong Yu and the others achieved good results, as long as they could come back alive, then their Lingying College would have the capital to promote. The cultivators who had participated in the assessment competition, he believed that many young cultivators would come because of their reputation. At that time, the reputation of Lingying College would become more and more famous. However, he had waited for so long, but there was no news of Nangong Yu and the others coming back. As time passed, the worry in his heart became more and more intense. The assessment competition is clearly over, but they haven't come back yet. Did something happen? Jian Qingqiu couldn't understand. It was reasonable to say that with such a lineup it was impossible to fail. In the history of the Qingxiao dynasty, there had been cases of complete annihilation, but sometimes they could come back safely. According to the frequency of this kind of thing happening in the past, it was half and half, but this time the camp was obviously stronger than before, so there should be no problem. Just as Jian Qingqiu was waiting, Lin Yinghao quickly walked in from the outside, his face full of anxiety. "Principal, things are not good." Listening to Lin Yinghao's words, Jian Qingqiu couldn't help but frown. His mood was already very bad, and now Lin Yinghao had come to touch his bad luck. His mood was even worse. What happened? Jian Qingqiu looked at Lin Yinghao impatiently. The most important thing for him now was the results of the assessment competition. Other than that, nothing else was important. The news of the assessment competition has come. Lin Yinghao didn't care about Jian Qingqiu's impatience. This was very important news. Jian Qingqiu immediately put away his impatience and his face became serious. Bad news about the assessment? Lin Yinghao's expression was ugly. He nodded and said, "The cultivators from the Green Firmament dynasty were completely annihilated." Jian Qingqiu's expression changed. He grabbed Lin Yinghao's clothes and said, "What did you say?" "The entire army has been wiped out. This is the news from the royal family." Right now, the entire royal family is at its lowest point. Lin Yinghao didn't care about Jian Qingqiu's actions. In fact, when he first heard the news, he also found it unbelievable. Originally, they all believed that Wei Junjie and the others would be able to achieve good results this time. They were just waiting for them to return home with glory and give them a big welcome. But who would have thought that the final result would be like this? Seeing that Lin Yinghao was so certain, Jian Qingqiu's face turned pale. His hands gradually let go of Lin Yinghao, and his expression was somewhat empty. The entire army was wiped out. They were completely annihilated. As a result, his wishful thinking had come to naught. Chapter 1660. With the addition of Wei Junjie, how could Nangong Yu'er and the others be completely wiped out? Jian Qingqiu was also a person who had seen the world. After a short period of frustration, he quickly recovered and asked Lin Yinghao for the specific details. Lin Yinghao shook his head and said, "I don't know. No one knows which dynasty they fell in the hands of." Boom! Jian Qingqiu took 2 steps back and fell directly on the stool. This result was simply too hard to accept. They were so confident in the assessment competition, but they did not expect their luck to be so bad. "Principal, there is another piece of bad news." Lin Yinghao looked at Jian Qingqiu hesitantly. This news was also something he did not want to see. After Jian Qingqiu heard another piece of bad news, he could not help but have a look of doubt in his eyes. He said, "Say it." At this time, Jian Qingqiu did not care anymore. After all, the worst situation had already happened. What could be worse? However, when Lin Yinghao said this, Jian Qingqiu found that this was even worse news. The cultivators of the Kanglin College participated in the assessment competition and were on the list of the top 100. Now they are disciples of the Tiangang sect. Lin Yinghao looked at Jian Qingqiu worriedly. This result was really unexpected. Sure enough, Jian Qingqiu's face couldn't be any darker. Since the Kanglin College resolutely withdrew from the 3 major colleges, they had been suppressing the Kanglin College. After cooperating with the royal family of the Qing dynasty, their reputation was much better than the Kanglin College. Therefore, it was not difficult for them to suppress the Kanglin College. They did not expect the students of the Kanglin College to achieve such good results. It seemed that the Kanglin College was going to make a comeback this time. Who is on the list of the top 100? Jian Qingqiu's eyes were as sharp as a knife, shooting straight at Lin Yinghao. The list of the top 100 was not something that ordinary people could get on. Even in the Lingyin College, there had not been a cultivator who had climbed to the top 100. The Kanglin College had not recruited many students over the years. How could such a cultivator appear? Bailey Hongzhuang. Lin Yinghao replied. Bailey Hongzhuang? Jian Qingqiu gritted his teeth as he said this name. It was precisely because of the existence of Bailey Hongzhuang that the plan for the college tournament went wrong. It actually allowed the Kanglin College to be in the limelight. However, after learning about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, Jian Qingqiu understood that he could not afford to offend her. Tiangang sect's young master's wife. With such a status, it would be very easy to kill him. Bailey Hongzhuang's identity is unusual. It's not strange that she's in the top 100. This can only be attributed to Ren Tianxiong's good luck. Jian Qingqiu's eyes flashed with a sinister and cold light. He had fought with Ren Tianxiong for so many years. It was not easy for him to defeat Ren Tianxiong. He did not expect the situation to turn around now. God knows how Ren Tianxiong managed to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang into the school. Bailey Hongzhuang was also strange. As the wife of the young master of the Tiangang sect, she actually went to the Kanglin College to cultivate. Wasn't this looking for trouble? Principal, but Bailey Hongzhuang is not the only one in the top 100. Chapter 1661. Hearing Lin Ninghao's words, Jian Qingqiu's face suddenly changed. He stood up again and asked, "How is it possible? Who else is there?" It was already a great thing for the Kanglin College to have Bailey Hongzhuang on the list. How could there be a second person? Lin Ninghao said with a bitter face, "Gong Shaoqing, Dong Fangyu, Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing are all on the list." As soon as these words came out, Jian Qingqiu couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at Lin Ninghao in surprise, wondering if he had heard wrong. "You said Dong Fangyu and the others are on the list? How is this possible?" Jian Qingqiu was speechless. Coming back alive and being on the list are two completely different concepts. Jian Qingqiu didn't believe it from the bottom of his heart. This was simply impossible. It was never easy to get on the list. Even in the history of the Qing Shao dynasty, there was only one cultivator who climbed the list. How could the Kanglin College suddenly have so many cultivators climb the list together? This was simply a fantasy. "Principal, this is true." Lin Ninghao's face was full of seriousness. He immediately handed a letter to Jian Qingqiu and said, "Look at this and you will know." When he first heard the news, he also felt that something must have gone wrong. This kind of thing was simply impossible. However, the facts made him have to admit that all this was true. Even if they didn't want to believe it, there was no way. Jian Qingqiu took the letter from Lin Ninghao's hand and opened it. He saw that the list of the top 100 in the assessment competition was written on the letter. Jian Qingqiu looked up from the 100th place. He couldn't find the names of Xia Jiqing and the others. He couldn't help but frown. There was clearly no one. However, when Jian Qingqiu's eyes fell on the 30th place, his face suddenly became ugly. 30th place Xia Jiqing. 29th place Bai Junyu. 28th place Dong Fangyu. 27th place Gong Shaoqing. How is this possible? Jian Qingqiu's eyes widened and his face was full of disbelief. He looked left and right and felt that all this was fake. However, he knew very well that no one would fake this kind of thing and there was no need to fake it. Dong Fangyu was actually ranked 28th in the exam. How is that possible with his strength? Jian Qingqiu had a deep impression of Dong Fangyu. At that time, Nangong Xiujie humiliated Dong Fangyu in every possible way. But Dong Fangyu didn't have the slightest power to fight back. However, for someone like Dong Fangyu to be able to achieve such a result in the top 100 was simply a fantasy. But what was written in black and white was clearly true. What was going on? We don't know why this happened either. The royal family confirmed it several times and finally confirmed that it was true, Lin Ninghao said. Jian Qingqiu's face was so gloomy that it could drip water. If the cultivators of Kanglin College had achieved such impressive results, then how could they compare with Kanglin College? Not to mention that all the previous suppression was useless. Now that the Kanglin College was elated, the unlucky ones would be them. Thinking of this, Jian Qingqiu could not accept it at all. Chapter 1662. Where is Bailey Hongzhuang? Why didn't I see Bailey Hongzhuang's name? Jian Qingqiu looked for a long time but didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang's name. He couldn't help but wonder. Lin Ninghao braced himself and said, "Principal, look up." Hearing this, Jian Qingqiu couldn't help but frown. He didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang's name in the top 20. Jian Qingqiu looked down from the top. However, after he saw the name of the first place, his eyes widened. He looked at all this in disbelief. First place. Jian Qingqiu breathed and stared at the name of the first place. Bailey Hongzhuang was the first. Lin Ninghao nodded and his face also became pale. When he learned that Bailey Hongzhuang had won the first place in the assessment competition, He also felt incredible. At this moment, the Kanglin College had completely turned over, and they could no longer suppress them. As long as this result was released, he was almost certain that the status of the Kanglin College would rise rapidly. It might even become the first college in the vicinity in a short time. Jian Qingqiu fell into the chair again. Such a proud result was Bailey Hongzhuang, who was killed by the royal family. When Bailey Hongzhuang left, the royal family fell into great turmoil. They had long known that Bailey Hongzhuang was not simple. However, now Bailey Hongzhuang's results were getting more and more amazing. Not only did they need to worry, but even the entire royal family should be worried. Beihai College. After Zhang Hongxi knew the results of the top 100, he was stunned on the spot. Looking at the familiar names above, especially the most eye-catching Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Since the end of the college tournament, he had been worried about the future of the college. After discussing with him for a long time, Jian Qingqiu decided to go on like this because they had no way out. Therefore, they had been suppressing the Kanglin College for the past 2 years. They believed that as long as this continued, the Kanglin College would soon collapse. Everything had been going well all this time. They didn't care about the departure of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. In their view, since Bailey Hongzhuang was Di Beichen's wife, she would naturally stay in Tiangang sect and would not return to Kanglin College to cultivate. However, who would have thought that not only did they participate in the competition, but they also achieved such good results. As long as Zhonglan College publicized this result, the status of Zhonglan College would rise. That was because the other academies couldn't obtain such a result at all. It was really too shocking. It's over now. Zhang Hongxi stared blankly at the names on the list. His face turned pale in an instant, as if he had lost his soul. Su Mingkong, the principal of Beihai College, looked at Zhang Hongxi angrily. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others have achieved such good results. What are you going to do? This is all your fault. Su Mingkong's face was full of anger. He wanted to kill Zhang Hongxi. As early as 2 years ago, after the college tournament, he had planned to keep a certain distance from Lingyin College. If this continued, he was afraid that it would implicate Beihai College. Chapter 1663. Fengbo Country. Xinyuan Yutian couldn't help but smile when he saw Xinyuan Huan and the others return safely. Before the start of the assessment, he thought for a long time before deciding to let Xinyuan Huan participate in the assessment. Because of the previous engagement, Xinyuan Huan's reputation in Fengbo Country dropped a lot, causing many people to question him. If Xinyuan Huan accepted the throne like this, there would be some unforeseen events. Therefore, he decided to let Xinyuan Huan participate in the assessment. As long as Xinyuan Huan can come back alive from the assessment, no one will dare to question him. In these 2 years he has been very worried. At first, with Xinyuan Huan's mischievous nature, he also hesitated, but when Xinyuan Huan replaced them to kneel in front of Di Beichen, he found that his son, who was always mischievous, had become an indomitable man. It was because of this that he decided to pass the throne to Xinyuan Huan. Fengbo Country was just a small dynasty, and there had been a situation where the whole army was wiped out. Occasionally, cultivators could come back safely, which was already a very happy thing. This time he also decided to take a gamble. Not only him, but Xinyuan Huan was also very persistent. Finally, under the prayers of everyone, Xinyuan Huan and the others returned safely to Fengbo Country. The whole country rejoiced. Bailey Zhentao was also worried about Bailey Haoshuan. The general's mansion was originally full of people, but now only he and Bailey Haoshuan were left. If something happened to Bailey Haoshuan, then he really couldn't hold on anymore. When the emperor ordered Bailey Haoshuan to participate in the assessment with Xinyuan Huan, he had to obey as a subject, but he was worried in his heart. Fortunately, God didn't cut off his last hope, and Bailey Haoshuan came back. Imperial Palace. Jiang Jining looked at Xinyuan Huan excitedly and said, "Huan, it's great that you are safe and sound. Mother has been worried to death these 2 years." Since Xinyuan Huan participated in the assessment, Jiang Jining has never slept well. She only had one son, and if something happened to Xinyuan Huan, she really didn't know what to do. Xinyuan Huan said with a smile, "Mother, Didn't I come back safely? Don't worry. Xianyuan Yutian patted Xianyuan Huan's shoulder, his face full of smiles. Good boy. I knew that my son would come back safely. After a series of greetings, Xianyuan Huan finally spoke up. Actually, it is all thanks to Bailey Hongzhuang that I was able to return safely this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to return. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang saved them, no cultivators came to find trouble with them. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others defeated the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty, even fewer cultivators came to find trouble with them. Almost the majority of the empires felt that the Tiangang Empire's group was in existence that couldn't be provoked. It was precisely because of this that they were able to survive until the end of the competition. If it wasn't for that, they would have died in the competition. Hearing the name Bailey Hongzhuang again, Xianyuan Yutian and Zhang Jining were both stunned for a moment and looked at Xianyuan Huan in surprise. You met Bailey Hongzhuang again? Since Bailey Hongzhuang left, they felt that they would never see Bailey Hongzhuang again in this life. Chapter 1664. Xianyuan Huan nodded and said, Bailey Hongzhuang also participated in the assessment competition. We met her there. As soon as these words came out, Xianyuan Yutian and Zhang Jining couldn't help but look at each other with a puzzled expression. Why did Bailey Hongzhuang participate in the assessment competition? Xianyuan Huan shook his head. I don't know. Her strength is much stronger than before. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang's help, we would have been completely wiped out. Xianyuan Yutian and Zhang Jining immediately understood the meaning of Xianyuan Huan's words, and were a little surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang was actually willing to help. This is really, thinking back to the time when Bailey Hongzhuang was willing to let them go, they were already very grateful. They didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was still willing to help. Thinking back to what they did to Bailey Hongzhuang, they really felt guilty. Xianyuan Huan's heart was also a little heavy. It was because of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions that he felt that he was really terrible in the past. However, he also knew that the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang made a move was just a matter of convenience. In Bailey Hongzhuang's heart, there was no longer any place for him. When Xianyuan Huan was explaining the situation to Xianyuan Yuqian and the others, Bailey Haoxuan was also talking with Bailey Zhentao. Father, I met Bailey Hongzhuang at the assessment competition. As Xianyuan Huan's voice fell, Bailey Zhentao's expression couldn't help but change a little. How is she? She is now completely different from the past. She is the first place in this assessment competition. From now on, she will be a disciple of Tiangang sect. Not only that, Di Beichen also specially went to the assessment competition to pick up Bailey Hongzhuang. All the cultivators in the assessment competition were shocked. Bailey Haoxuan felt incredulous when he recalled the scene that happened during the assessment. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was ridiculed by everyone at the beginning, unexpectedly became the focus of attention. Not only that, Di Beichen turned out to be the young lord of Tiangang Zong. All of this gave him a great shock. However, just by looking at Xianyuan Huan's expression at that time, he knew that Xianyuan Huan already knew about this matter. Father, did you already know that Di Beichen is the young lord of Tiangang sect? Then why didn't you tell me before? Bailey Zhentao didn't immediately answer Bailey Haoxuan's question. His mind was completely immersed in the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang won first place. First place in the assessment competition. What kind of glory was that? Bailey Hongzhuang was originally his daughter. If he had treated Bailey Hongzhuang well in the past, then he would be in the limelight now. However, he had destroyed everything with his own hands. Now that he heard this, he felt a burst of panic in his heart. What's the difference between knowing and not knowing? Bailey Zhentao sighed faintly. His original majesty had disappeared. In just a few years he had aged a lot. Looking at Bailey Zhentao's appearance, Bailey Haoxuan hesitated for a moment and didn't say anything. Yes, knowing or not knowing didn't make any difference at all. In fact, before he knew about this matter, he felt better in his heart. After knowing this, his heart felt even worse. Chapter 1665. Songlong College, Special Enrollment Dormitory. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were sitting in Bailey Hongzhuang's dormitory. As for Di Beichen's room, It was now occupied by Heimu and the three beasties. Baisher and the others are now following Heimu. Just now they urged Heimu to go out and buy food. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile revealed a bit of helplessness. With Heimu by the three beasties' side, she was a lot more relaxed, but Heimu was going to be tired. Heimu has money on him, don't worry. Di Baichen was full of smiles. He recently found that bringing Heimu along was really beneficial. Originally, the three beasties had been following Hongzhuang around like third wheels. Now that Heimu brought the three guys out, wouldn't he have time to be alone with Hongzhuang? Thinking of this, Di Baichen only felt that he appreciated Heimu more and more. As a shadow guard, it was really not easy to share his worries all the time. Di Baichen secretly decided that when he returned, he must reward Heimu well. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichen's smile and couldn't help but narrow her eyes. Why are you so happy? Di Baichen's expression quickly returned to normal. Nothing, I'm just happy for Baisher and the others. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichen suspiciously. She didn't think that Di Baichen was telling the truth. Wife, I haven't seen you for so long. I just want to be alone with you for a while. Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a gentle gaze, his beautiful face full of affection. Since Hongzhuang returned, his tense heart had been relieved. But until now, they had almost never had a good conversation. It was rare that there was nothing going on today, so they could spend some time alone. A ripple appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes. She stared at Di Baichen's bright and dazzling eyes, and the corners of her lips curled into a lotus-like smile. Wife, master has agreed to our marriage, Di Baichen said with a smile. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but have a look of surprise in her eyes. She immediately moved closer to Di Baichen. Really? Did the sect master really agree? She had always been worried that there would be many obstacles between her and Baichen, because the difference in status between the two was not small. This could be deduced from the attitude of the elders back then. Fortunately, the sect master didn't show any dissatisfaction with her from the beginning. Now that she heard Di Baichen say this, she naturally felt a burst of joy. When he saw the excitement in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, Di Baichen's gaze gradually softened. An indescribable happiness and satisfaction filled his heart. Based on Hongzhuang's reaction, he could see Hongzhuang's feelings for him. It was a good thing that he had appeared early enough and captured Hongzhuang's heart. Wife, you're so happy. Di Baichen grinned at Bailey Hongzhuang like a fox, filled with craftiness and evil charm. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but restrain her expression, and then turned around and asked, "Are you happy?" When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang turn around, Di Baichen couldn't help but step forward and wrap his arms around Bailey Hongzhuang's slender waist. He rested his chin on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and said, "I'm happy, how can I not be happy? Being able to marry you is the happiest thing in my life, Di Baichen." Chapter 1666. Di Baichen needs Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hands, his voice low and charming. Although we got married in Fengbo country, my identity is Fengbo country's prince, not my real identity. This time, I will marry you as Tiangang sect's young sect leader, and announce it to the world. Only in this way, Bailey Hongzhuang is Di Baichen's real wife. Bailey Hongzhuang leans in Di Baichen's arms, her delicate and beautiful face ripples with a smile. She is really touched that Di Baichen treats her so sincerely. To me, it doesn't matter whether the world knows or not, as long as you have me in your heart. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice is gentle and beautiful, slowly narrating her inner thoughts. Di Baichen hugs Bailey Hongzhuang. You will always be in my heart, but I want everyone to know that you are my most cherished woman. Hongzhuang is his beloved woman. He doesn't want Hongzhuang to suffer any grievances. He only wants to give all the best things to Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembles slightly. Her heart is so hot. Listening to Di Baichen's words, she only feels that all her sufferings are nothing. Even if she transmigrated and became a waste of a young lady step by step, she has to go through hardships to get to where she is now. But as long as Di Baichen is by her side, she feels that everything is worth it. Perhaps this is fate. Otherwise, why did she transmigrate into Bailey Hongzhuang's body and meet Di Baichen? It is all destined. Baichen, it's so good to have you by my side. If it weren't for Baichen by her side, She doesn't know when she would know that the parents of this body are still suffering. Although she is the Bailey Hongzhuang from 1,000 years ago, after fusing with the memories of this life, she is no longer the Bailey Hongzhuang from 1,000 years ago, but the combination of the two Bailey Hongzhuang from 1,000 years ago and 1,000 years later. Although she didn't experience everything that this body has experienced before, all the memories are incomparably deep. As if she has experienced it herself, she can feel it. So now she is the combination of these two lives. The parents of this body are her parents. If Di Bei-chan hadn't been by her side and discovered all of this early, she didn't know when she would have known all of this. Once she finds out that her parents are no longer alive, she will regret it for the rest of her life. She has always been grateful to Di Bei-chan. She is grateful to him for appearing in her life, for always being by her side, for protecting her in all ways. She loves Di Bei-chan even more. No matter if he is handsome, domineering, affectionate, or decadent, she loves him. From the moment Di Bei-chan walked into her heart, he has taken root in her heart, grew up and occupied her whole heart. The two of them hugged each other quietly. Even when they hear each other's breathing, they feel that it is the most beautiful thing. Wife, I have something to tell you. Di Bei-chan looks lovingly at Bailey Hongzhuang, who is snuggling in his arms. At this moment, Hongzhuang has lost her usual strength and is more like a little bird. It seems that he can only see her like this when he is by Hongzhuang's side. She is especially cute and pitiful. Bailey Hongzhuang nods slightly. She squints her eyes lazily, relaxed and at ease. What is it? Chapter 1667. Di Bei-chan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. He also didn't want to ruin the atmosphere. However, this matter was really important. Before returning to Tiangang sect, he had to tell Hongzhuang first so that she could be mentally prepared. Wife, I'm afraid this matter will exceed your expectations, Di Bei-chan said slowly. In fact, when he first heard his master talk about his past, his heart was filled with surprise. However, as they talked more and more, everything seemed to be connected as if it was a nail on a board. Now, both he and his master felt that Hongzhuang was his master's granddaughter. However, the real confirmation still needed to be completed by Hongzhuang. Hearing Di Bei-chan's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. She looked at Di Bei-chan with a worried expression. Did something happen to my parents? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's nervous state, Di Bei-chan hurriedly caressed Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Wife, don't think too much. It's not about that. Bailey Hongzhuang let out a sigh of relief. The nervousness in her phoenix eyes also dissipated a little. She asked, Then what is it? Bailey Hongzhuang sat up straight. Just from Di Bei-chan's tone of voice, she could tell that this matter wasn't simple. If it wasn't so, Di Bei-chan wouldn't have asked her to mentally prepare herself first. I think that my master might be your grandfather. Di Bei-chan pursed his thin lips. His dazzling starry eyes stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, looking straight into her heart. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned when she heard this. Her bright eyes were filled with astonishment and disbelief. Her expression was filled with confusion and suspicion. Bei-chan, you're saying that the sect leader might be my grandfather? How is that possible? Didn't you say that my mother was an outstanding disciple of the Sun Moon Palace? And you didn't even know about my grandparents' existence? There were many cultivators in the Shangxian continent. As a cultivator, they would often walk in dangerous situations, and the chances of losing their lives were extremely high. It was precisely because of this that many children were orphans. This situation was not strange. According to the information Di Bei-chan had gathered, Bailey Hongzhuang thought that Mu Lingbing had been adopted by the Sun Moon Palace and that her parents were no longer around. However, how could he suddenly get involved with the Tiangang sect master now? With the sect master's wisdom, how could he not know about his own child? Seeing the puzzled look on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Di Bei-chan couldn't help but explain. The reason for this is a little complicated. Master didn't think of this possibility before. He only guessed it later. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Bei-chan silently, waiting for Di Bei-chan's explanation. Whether it was Di Bei-chan or the sect leader, they weren't people who would speak without thinking. Since they had said so, they believed that they had enough reasons to convince others. This matter started from when my master was young. Dibeichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang and slowly told her about his master's past. Bailey Hongzhuang listened carefully to Dibeichen's words. However, the more she listened, the more shocked she became. She never thought that the sect leader would have such a past when he was young. This kind of emotional twists and turns were truly vexing. However, towards Mu Jin's, Bailey Hongzhuang admired her very much, but also felt sad for her. Chapter 1668. So, sect master is certain of all this because of my mother's name? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Even if Mu Jin's had mentioned this name, it seemed that all of this could not be confirmed. After all, just a name could be a coincidence. Dibeichen shook his head slightly. Not only that. Back then, the person who destroyed the relationship between master and master's wife was Yu Siqing of the Yu clan. And when Yu Manlan attacked you, it was with Yu Siqing's help. The rainbow divine pearl in your body was taken out by Yu Siqing, and your parents were humiliated by the Yu clan when they begged the Yu clan to save you. All of this seems to be too much of a coincidence, and Yu Siqing hates you too much. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually sharpened. From Dibeichen's words, she was keenly aware of the problem. According to a woman's intuition, she increasingly felt that this possibility was very high. Are you sure that Yu Siqing was the one who did all this? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flickered, and a cold light flashed in the depths of her eyes. Dibeichen nodded. Yes, master has already confirmed this matter. It was Yu Siqing. Not only that, master also asked Yu Siqing if she knew your identity, but Yu Siqing never answered. But it's this kind of cover-up that makes it even more suspicious, so I think that after we return to Tiangang sect in a few days, you and master will do a blood test, okay? Dibeichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. In this way, this identity could be completely confirmed. Whether it was or not, everyone could be at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and nodded. Okay. Sect master had been feeling guilty for so many years because of what happened back then, and until now she had been searching for Mu Jin's whereabouts. Even if it was to reassure sect master, she was willing to test it. If not, sect master could also be at ease. If this was the case, then this Yu Siqing was too hateful. Back then, she had ruined the relationship between the sect master and Mu Jin Se. Later on, she had even harmed her mother and herself. This woman's thoughts were simply too vicious. However, based on the way Yu Siqing had destroyed the relationship between the sect master and Mu Jin Se, it was clear that she was not a kind person. In order to obtain the person she liked, she didn't use any perverted methods. She didn't even care about her good friends. She did her best to destroy everything, destroying the sect master and Mu Jin Se's lifetime happiness. If the sect master was really her grandfather, then where was her grandmother? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think, but she didn't say it out loud. After all, nothing had been confirmed yet, and it was still too early to say anything. If this was just their wrong guess, then it would be ridiculous to think too much about it now. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had already engraved Yu Siqing's name in her mind. It was because of Yu Siqing that she had fallen to such a state, and her parents had suffered so much. Originally, she should have enjoyed a great reputation in the Shangxian continent at such a young age. Her status would be high, her parents would be well, and she would be living the life of a pearl. However, because of Yu Siqing, she had been forced to separate from her parents. She had suffered so much at such a young age, and had lived under the ridicule and sarcasm of the masses for so many years. All of this was because of Yu Siqing. As long as Yu Siqing was still alive, she would kill her with her own hands. Chapter 1669. Dibeichen noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, and immediately pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his embrace, his heart aching. His embrace was warm and tight, filled with a comforting feeling. My wife, I will definitely make Yu Siqing pay the price. Dibeichen's handsome face turned cold. His hawk-like eyes filled with coldness and killing intent. That intense hatred and killing intent was enough to shock anyone. Ever since he knew that everything that Hongzhuang had suffered was because of Yu Siqing, Dibeichen's hatred for Yu Siqing had reached the peak. He had never hated someone so much before. When he thought of how Yu Siqing's selfishness had caused his wife to suffer for so many years, he secretly made up his mind to let Yu Siqing have a taste of pain. Such a vicious and despicable woman should have been punished long ago. Bailey Hongzhuang leaned her head on Di Beichen's shoulder and nodded. She will regret everything she did. Her ink-black jade-like indifference was filled with a chilly light. She would definitely make Yu Siqing suffer 1,000 times more pain. For her parents, for the sect leader and Mu Jin's. At this point, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but raise her head to look at Di Beichen. Beichen, have you found my parents in these 2 years? Although she knew that the possibility wasn't high, Bailey Hongzhuang still wanted to know the progress. After all, only after knowing the progress would she know what to do. Di Beichen shook his head slightly. I haven't found them yet, but I've confirmed that they are in the Yu clan. It's just that their location is too hidden, so it's hard to find out. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't surprised, but she still frowned. If they couldn't find her parents' location, then how could they rescue them? Could they just attack the Yu clan directly? Once the Yu clan knew that they had gone there for Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, they would definitely move the two of them away or even kill them. Therefore, they couldn't act blindly without thinking. Only after rescuing her parents would they be able to act without any scruples. If we can't find them, what should we do? Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen. This situation was really too troublesome. I believe that someone will be able to find them, Di Beichen said in a deep voice. Who? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually brightened. As long as there was a chance, they couldn't give up. Slaughter Heaven Pavilion. Heaven Beichen said. As long as you paid the price, no matter what information you wanted, Slaughter Tower would be able to give you an accurate answer. As long as the price was the price. The answer. The Slaughter Heaven. Yes. After hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face showed a touch of surprise. Slaughter Heaven Pavilion? Di Beichen nodded slightly and continued, that's right. I've already contacted Slaughter Heaven Pavilion. However, because the young master of Slaughter Heaven Pavilion wasn't there, they couldn't confirm whether to accept this mission or not. Now that the young master of Slaughter Heaven Pavilion has returned, I believe that there will be an answer soon. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. From Di Beichen's words, she knew that Di Beichen already knew about Mo Yunjua's identity. Chapter 1670. You recognized Mo Yunjua. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. What she said was an affirmative sentence, not a question. Di Beichen nodded. It was hard to forget someone as impressive as Mo Yunjua after seeing him once. What's more, the expressions of Xia Jiqing and the others were clearly reminding him. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but explain, Mo Yunjua and I. She didn't want Di Beichen to misunderstand. She and Mo Yunjua were just friends, nothing else. She didn't want Di Beichen to have any grudges because of such things. She only hoped to maintain enough trust with Di Beichen and not have any doubts. However, without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to finish speaking, Di Beichen had already hugged Bailey Hongzhuang directly. Bailey Hongzhuang's back was slightly stiff, and Di Beichen's voice sounded in her ears. During the days when I wasn't with you, Mo Yunjua was able to protect you. I'm very grateful to him. For me, the most important thing is you. You can return to me safely, this is the happiest thing for me. Di Beichen's handsome face was filled with a smile. I understand your thoughts. He never doubted Hongzhuang's sincerity to him, not to mention that he was full of confidence in himself. Thinking back to the time when he wanted to pursue Hongzhuang, he spent a lot of effort. When he saw Mo Yunjua's appearance, he knew that he was not very good with words. He believed that Mo Yunjua would not be his opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know the thoughts in Di Beichen's mind. She only felt extremely moved, and her hands wrapped around Di Beichen's broad back. She was very happy that Beichen trusted her so much. Just like how she trusted Beichen, there was no need for her to say anything. The other party would understand. Beichen, I also have something to tell you, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Now that they were talking about these things, she also had something very important to tell Di Beichen. Wife, please speak. Your husband is listening. Di Beichen raised his long eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. His voice was even more gentle and pleasant. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and continued, I obtained the final inheritance in the small world's ancient ruins. Di Beichen nodded slightly. He had also heard about this. After all, relics in small worlds had always been extraordinary existences and were extremely eye-catching. Every time an ancient ruin appeared, it would become the focus of everyone's attention. My wife is really amazing. You make your husband very proud. His bright eyes were filled with admiration and admiration. Today, Hongzhuang's potential was becoming more and more shocking. Her performance was also becoming more and more outstanding. He firmly believed that Hongzhuang was that pearl. Even if she had been covered in dust all these years, sooner or later, she would bloom again. From the moment Hongzhuang spoke in the Lan family, it already meant that she was extraordinary. Looking at Di Beichen's admiration, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly and said, The owner of that ancient ruin is the palace master of Limitless Palace. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen's expression changed a little. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. Palace master of Limitless Palace, Yu Linfeng? That's right. He's my master. You actually obtained the inheritance of Palace Master Yu? Di Beichen was astonished. This news sounded unbelievable. Chapter 1671. With a playful smile on her beautiful face, Bailey Hongzhuang thought about what had happened and felt that it was very interesting. At that time, ancient ruins had always been built by experts who had already fallen. There had never been any cultivators who were still alive who built them. Therefore, when she met Yu Linfeng, she felt that it was too inconceivable. Thinking back carefully, Yu Linfeng's way of doing things was very normal. The reason why experts would build ancient ruins was to find a suitable successor, so as to prevent their inheritance from disappearing from this world. Rather than waiting until they were about to fall to find an inheritor, it was better to find one while they were still alive. In this way, the inheritance would be more secure. When the assessment competition ended, Limitless Palace's elder Gu Taihong recruited you because of this? Di Beichen immediately thought of what had happened at the end of the assessment competition. At that time, when Gu Taihong was recruiting Hongzhuang, he felt that it was very strange. Logically speaking, under such circumstances, anyone would know that Hongzhuang would not join other sects, let alone the always smart and slick Gu Taihong. He had always felt that there was a problem, but he had never thought of the answer. Now that he heard Hongzhuang say this, he immediately understood. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, Elder Gu told me to make a trip to Limitless Palace. I plan to go to Limitless Palace after returning from Azure Water School. Will you accompany me? Since my wife has ordered, your husband will naturally accompany you. Di Beichen's reply was very natural. He and Hongzhuang had been separated for such a long time. Now that they were finally together, he was not willing to be separated from Hongzhuang again. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles. Her delicate face was now even more beautiful. That's great. My wife, what inheritance did you obtain from Palace Master Yu? Even Di Beichen was surprised when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained Yu Linfeng's inheritance. Everyone knew that Yu Linfeng was a genius. Back then, he had used his own strength to sweep away many outstanding cultivators, shocking the entire Shangxian continent. No one knew where Yu Linfeng came from, but when he appeared, he was already an extraordinary existence. Under the leadership of Yu Linfeng, Limitless Palace became more and more powerful. In just a short period of time, it had become one of the most famous 10 great sects. However, Yu Linfeng was usually quite mysterious, and it was very difficult to see him in person. Moreover, there had never been any news of him excepting a disciple. He never thought that Yu Linfeng would actually build a relic in the small world. Once this news got out, it would definitely cause a lot of people to be surprised. This was because Yu Linfeng was the most famous existence in the Shangxian continent. His every move was closely watched. Moreover, Yu Linfeng had a few trump cards that were very powerful. If his wife could obtain the inheritance of this martial technique, he believed that her strength would be much stronger. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words shocked Di Beichen. Master said that he wants to give limitless palace to me, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. When these words came out, Di Beichen could not help but be stunned for a moment. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment and disbelief. What did you say? Chapter 1672. Master said that he wants to hand over limitless palace to me, Bailey Hongzhuang repeated. She understood Di Beichen's surprise. In fact, when she heard her master's words for the first time, she also felt that she had heard wrongly. For a long time, other than the experts who had already fallen, when ordinary experts were looking for an inheritor, especially the inheritor of a sect, they would need to consider it very strictly. Many experts would train their inheritors from a young age. Who could be like her master and directly choose an inheritor from the ruins? That's what Master said in the ruins. However, I think I still need to make a trip to Limitless Palace to know the details. After all, it's not that easy to choose an inheritor. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and said. Although her master seemed to be very optimistic about her, as if everything had already been decided, she would not completely accept this matter before it was truly confirmed. In this world, many unexpected things would often happen. Even if the result had already been decided, there might still be unforeseen events later on. Moreover, her master was looking for the inheritor of Limitless Palace. This definitely required more tests. Therefore, even if her master changed his decision, she would not have any dissatisfaction. This was because her master had already helped her enough so far. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen nodded slightly. That perfect face of his was still filled with amazement. My wife is really not simple. After participating in the assessment competition, she became the inheritor of Limitless Palace. If this news were to spread, I'm afraid everyone would be dumbfounded. Di Beichen's face was filled with a smile. He discovered that Hongzhuang was really a strange woman. There were many ruins in Shangxian continent and there were also many ruins in small worlds. However, to be able to enter the ruins and be chosen as the inheritor of a sect by the owner of the ruins, other than his wife, he was afraid that no one else could be like her. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, he was very clear that as the inheritor of a sect, one would need to go through all sorts of tests to establish one's identity and consolidate one's position. Thinking back to when his master brought him back to the sect and began to train him from a young age, there were also many voices of dissent in the sect. It was precisely because of this that his master's requirements for him were exceptionally strict, and he was exceptionally hard-working in his cultivation. Even so, after his master left, because of the problem with his legs, the hall master and elders still took this opportunity to let him leave Tiangang sect. This was the first time he had heard of Yu Linfeng directly choosing Hongzhuang as his successor. Just as Hongzhuang had said, nothing was certain at the moment. However, from Yu Linfeng's words, one could tell how satisfied he was with Hongzhuang. It was not that there were no female sect leaders in the sect, but the number of female sect leaders was much less than that of male sect leaders. Although both men and women were cultivators in the Shangxian continent, most of the time, men had the advantage. It was more difficult for a woman to become a sect master than a man. Even so, Yu Linfeng still made such a decision. This was enough to show how much Yu Linfeng valued Hongzhuang. What's more, according to his understanding, although Limitless Palace Master Yu Linfeng's character was slightly strange, he was also a man of his words. Since Yu Linfeng had said such words, there shouldn't be any problems. Chapter 1673. Luck is a part of one's strength. Di Beichen's voice was natural and firm. As a cultivator walking in the Shangxian continent, luck was a very important part. Luck was an indescribable thing, but every cultivator who became a powerhouse must have a certain amount of luck. Therefore, everyone believed that luck was also a part of one's strength. Hongzhuang was able to obtain Yu Linfeng's affirmation on one hand. It was because of luck that she encountered the ruins. However, at that time, how many cultivators entered the ruins? They also had the same luck. However, in the end, only Hongzhuang obtained the inheritance. This was because of her hard work and potential to reach this step. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that perhaps part of the reason why her master decided to give her limitless palace was because of the unfair treatment she received from the Lan family. Her master was also from the Lan family, but it must be because the Lan family did something unacceptable that made her master hate them to the extreme. If not, her master would not even want the Rainbow God Pearl. After thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang still did not tell Di Beichen about this, because this was her master's matter. If she guessed correctly, even in the entire Shangxian continent, not many people would know about this matter. Since her master did not want to have anything to do with the Lan family, she naturally would not tell him about this matter. After all, this was not an extremely important matter in itself. In 2 days we will set off for Limitless Palace, Di Beichen said slowly. Their purpose of coming to the Azure Water School had been completed. There was not much meaning in continuing to stay. Gong Xiaoqing and the others were also preparing to return to their homes. After staying in the exam for 2 years, the place they wanted to go the most was home. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. She also wanted to go to Limitless Palace to take a look. Moreover, her master had helped her a lot in the ruins. She must pay a visit to her master. Oh right, Beichen, I have the Rainbow God Pearl. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled sweetly as she looked at Di Beichen. This was one of her great gains from the assessment. Ever since she had fused with the Rainbow Divine Pearl, her strength had increased a lot. Even her dantian had become larger and more comfortable. It felt as if something was missing from her dantian. Although it didn't affect anything, she still felt a little empty. Ever since she fused with the Rainbow Divine Pearl, she realized that this was how it should be. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Di Beichen's eyes were once again filled with a hint of surprise. Rainbow Divine Pearl? He knew that the Rainbow Sacred Pearl in Hongzhuang's body had been transferred into Lan Qingyin's body. It was precisely because of the Rainbow Sacred Pearl that no cultivator of the same level was a match for Lan Qingyan. The reason why Lan Qingyan could become so famous in the Shangxian continent all these years was largely because of the Rainbow Pearl. At the same time, the 7-colored Divine Pearl was a unique inheritance of the Lan family. Everyone was filled with envy and admiration towards the Lan family. However, how did Hongzhuang have the Rainbow Sacred Pearl in her body? According to his understanding of the Lan family's inheritance, only one person in a generation would have the Rainbow Sacred Pearl in their body. Moreover, many times it would not appear for several generations. Master gave me a Rainbow Sacred Pearl, and now I have already fused with it. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It was rare to see Di Beichen so surprised. Chapter 1674. Palace Master Yu has the Rainbow Sacred Pearl? Even Di Beichen, after hearing this news at this moment, showed a shocked expression. As everyone knew, only the Lan family had the Rainbow Sacred Pearl. Ordinary people couldn't even see it, let alone have the Rainbow Sacred Pearl. Moreover, Palace Master Yu gave such a treasure like the Rainbow Sacred Pearl to Hongzhuang, which was enough to prove that Palace Master Yu was good to Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, I was also surprised at the time. Her deep eyes revealed a clear light of thinking, as if she could see through people's hearts at a glance. Di Beichen was keenly aware that Hongzhuang still had something to tell him, but with his understanding of Hongzhuang, since Hongzhuang didn't say it, it meant that this matter couldn't be said. Otherwise, with Hongzhuang's trust in him, Hongzhuang would definitely say it. This matter should be Palace Master Yu's privacy, and he didn't have the intention to pry. Have you integrated the Rainbow Sacred Pearl into your dantian? Di Beichen couldn't help but hold Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, and his flawless face was filled with worry. With Hongzhuang's current situation, it was extremely dangerous to integrate the Rainbow Sacred Pearl into her body. With a little carelessness, Hongzhuang may die. Although he had heard a lot of dangerous things that Hongzhuang had encountered in the small world from Xiaojiqing and others, he had never heard of such a thing. Compared to the matter of fusing with the Rainbow Divine Pearl, the other risks were not even considered risks. He never knew that Hongzhuang had done such a dangerous thing in the assessment competition. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Yes, it has been integrated. Such a dangerous thing, what if something goes wrong? Di Beichen frowned. Even if he didn't know enough about the process, just by listening he knew how risky it was. Looking at Di Beichen's nervous look, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Don't worry, aren't I in front of you now? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's cute and well-behaved appearance, Di Beichen was also helpless. Hongzhuang was his weakness, and he couldn't blame her at all. Suddenly, Di Beichen couldn't help but think of his inexplicable heartache and nervousness in Tiangang sect before, and couldn't help but ask, "Wife, when did you integrate the rainbow sacred pearl?" "More than half a year ago." Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment before answering. After she came out of the ruins, the rest of the journey was very easy. Speaking of which, the inheritance in the ruins, ancient ruins. Hearing this, Di Beichen couldn't help but think of the heartache he felt at that time. Before, he didn't understand why he was so heartbroken that he couldn't breathe. In the narration of Xia Jiqing and others, they never mentioned anything about it. After listening to Hongzhuang's explanation, he finally understood what was going on. Just from his painful situation at that time, he could know how much pain Hongzhuang had suffered at that time. He knew Hongzhuang's personality. No matter how much pain she had suffered, she would talk about it with a light look, and wouldn't let others worry at all. But it was such a Hongzhuang that made him feel even more distressed. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang tightly in his arms, his low voice hoarse and nervous. "Wife, don't do such dangerous things in the future," Di Beichen said solemnly. Chapter 1675. Di Beichen had never worried about anything in the first 10 years of his life, and now Hongzhuang was the only person he was worried about. The thought that Hongzhuang might leave him was unbearable. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a happy smile as she nodded. Okay. The two hugged each other quietly. That night the two talked a lot. From the past to the present, from never knowing each other to loving each other until the two fell asleep. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were enjoying this quiet and peaceful moment, Haimu had been accompanying the three beasts to eat. He was the young master's shadow guard, and now he had become a contract beast breeder. It seemed that he would have to do this all the time. The results of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others caused an uproar in Kanglan City, and the practitioners of the mercenary union also spread the news. Even if they did not know Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, at least they were all from Kanglan City, and they had even seen Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. This alone was enough for them to brag about. Almost as long as they met mercenaries from other places, they would brag about it. The students of Kanglan College were in the top 100 of the assessment competition, and this news spread far and wide as the mercenaries talked about it. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and soon the news had been known by many practitioners. Originally, many cultivators who wanted to enter Lingyin College and Beihai College chose Kanglan College after knowing the results of Kanglan College. In the past, Kanglan College was suppressed by Lingyin College and Beihai College, and everyone thought that the strength of Kanglan College was not as good as the other two colleges. However, the results were the most important. When the cultivators knew the results of the Azure Water College, all the previous rumors had no meaning. At least Lingyin College and Beihai College had never had such a proud result. Not to mention the first place of the top 100, even the last place of the top 100 had never appeared. At this point, Kanglan College was not comparable to Lingyin College and Beihai College. Once the news came out, the enrollment of Lingyin College and Beihai College dropped sharply. Not only that, even the students of the two major schools couldn't hold back after learning about this matter. Many students were preparing to drop out and go to the Azure Water School. After discovering this, Jian Qingqiu and Su Mingkong were dumbfounded. Even though they were prepared for the reduction of the student union, the situation was obviously worse than they thought. This was because they had neglected the existence of the Mercenary Association in Azure Water City. The Mercenary Guild was the organization with the largest number of people in the Shangxian continent. Any news that spread from the Mercenary Guild would spread across the entire continent in a very short period of time. Jian Qingqiu and Su Mingkong racked their brains to get the students back, but none of their actions could move the determination of the cultivators to go to Kanglan College. Lingyin College had always paid attention to the royal family, and many civilian cultivators were suppressed in Lingyin College. The reason why they stayed in Lingyin College was because of the fame of Lingyin College, but in fact they were more interested in Kanglan College. Because the Azure Water School truly treated everyone equally. Now, the Kanglan College was more famous than the Lingyin College. Why would they continue to stay here? Chapter 1676. Ren Tianxiong and Huan Qiyu also expected that this year's enrollment results would be better than usual. But after seeing the cultivators gathered outside the school, they were surprised. All the inns in Songlan City were full. Not only that, but almost all the places that could rest were filled with cultivators who wanted to enter the school. Even though the prices of the inns had risen again and again, young cultivators still came in an endless stream. Not only the inns, but the restaurant's business was also rising. Originally, it was not the time for the school to enroll, but seeing so many cultivators gathered outside, Ran Tianxiong and Huan Qiyu decided to enroll first. Not only did the number of cultivators increase, but even the number of rich merchants who wanted to sponsor the expansion of the school increased. This situation could be said to be the most glorious in the history of the school. The anger in Ren Tianxiong and Huan Qiyu's hearts had long been swept away. Lu Huayan and the others were all proud of their success. No matter where they went, their faces were full of smiles. Now, as long as the cultivators of Songlan School mentioned that they were students of the school, they would feel supreme glory. This situation was completely different from the bleak past. After seeing that the school was developing in a good direction, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also said their goodbyes. They came back this time to be able to contribute to the school. Now that the effect had been achieved, there was no use for them to continue to stay. What's more, because there were more and more foreign cultivators, no matter where they went, they would attract a lot of exclamations. Not only that, even if they stayed in the dormitory for special admission students, there would also be cultivators waiting outside so that they could speak a few words to them. After seeing the situation become more and more intense, everyone wisely decided not to continue to stay here. Ren Tianxiong and the others knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were leaving, and they also sent them off. If you have time, come back to the school and have a look. We will always welcome you back. Ren Tianxiong looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with a face full of smiles. His appearance was completely different from before. Originally, he had always felt guilty. Songlan School kept falling in his hands, and he really let down the previous principal. He didn't think that the heavens would treat him so well, and instead lead the school to unprecedented glory. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others smiled and nodded. We will. The Azure Water School was the place where they met and had their best memories. If there was a chance in the future, they would definitely come back to take a look. Lu Qingyue stood beside Huan Qiyu. Her eyes flickered as she looked at Gong Shaoqing and said, Big brother Gong, I will definitely come and find you. Gong Shaoqing nodded slightly. Okay. In addition to recruiting cultivators, Tiangangzong also recruited excellent alchemists. Therefore, Lu Qingyue has decided to participate in the alchemist assessment. As long as she passes the alchemist assessment, she can become an alchemist of Tiangang sect. This way, she would be able to accompany Big Brother Gong. It was not easy for an ordinary alchemist to participate in the alchemist assessment of Tiangang sect, but with Di Beichan, a place to participate in the assessment was nothing. Good luck, we're all waiting for you. Dong Fengyu smiled. Although they came back this time, the problem between Gong Shaoqing and Lu Qingyue had not been completely resolved. Chapter 1677. With Lu Qingyue's talent in alchemy, it should not be difficult to pass the assessment of Tiangang sect. What's more, Tiangang sect has Gong Shaoqing. Lu Qingyue will definitely do her best to pass the assessment. Gong Shaoqing has always had a cold temperament, except for Lu Qingyue. Other women will not care about him. As long as Lu Qingyue continues to persevere, they believe that Gong Shaoqing will be defeated by Lu Qingyue. Hearing this, Lu Qingyue smiled and nodded. I will. Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Boss, I will go home first. When the 3 months are up, I will go to Tiangang sect to find you. Okay, I will wait for you at Tiangang sect. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. After coming out for so long, everyone should go back. However, when she thought of her parents, her eyes could not help but flash a deep light. Di Beichan seemed to know Bailey Hongzhuang's inner thoughts. His right hand slowly rested on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder, giving a little comfort. At least, he has always been by Hongzhuang's side. We are also leaving. See you at Tiangang sect. Dong Fengyu smiled brightly. He used to feel bored at home, but now that he has been out for so long, he really wants to go home and take a look. Goodbye. Everyone waved their hands, and the golden sunlight shone on everyone warm and bright. Sunny and comfortable smiles filled everyone's faces. When they meet next time, everyone's identity will be different. Now they are standing here as students of Kanglin College, and the next time they meet, they will be cultivators of Tiangang sect. Di Beichen took Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. His handsome face filled with a doting smile. Wife, let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was as elegant and indifferent as a lotus. Okay. The next moment, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang went forward together. He Mu hurriedly followed behind Di Beichen. The three beasts stuck to his body, one on each of his shoulders and one in his arms. The three beasts kept jumping up and down, scratching black wood from time to time. He Mu felt very helpless about this. Ever since he got together with the three beasties, these were the most chaotic days of his life. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen pretended not to see it. It was rare for the three beasts to like He Mu so much, so the two of them could spend some quality time together. Ren Tianxiong and Huan Chuyu looked at the departing figures and sighed with emotion. The one who left the deepest impression on them was Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang, Gong Shaoqing and the others wouldn't have achieved such results. In the short span of 2 years they had all transformed. Lu Huaiyan and Fu Hongba were the most emotional. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang refused their invitation. Just by relying on Bailey Hongzhuang's ability, they already had the confidence to refuse. Speaking of which, the two of them were even more fortunate that they insisted on inviting Bailey Hongzhuang to the college. If they had given up at that time, then they wouldn't have such an opportunity now. Now that Kanglin College's reputation was getting more and more resounding, as the teachers of the special enrollment class, they were extremely loved and respected. This kind of feeling was really what they had been pursuing. Lu Qinyue kept looking at Gong Shaoqing's back until he gradually disappeared from her sight. No matter what, she must become an alchemist of Tiangang sect. Chapter 1678. Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way. Both of them were not in a hurry. 3 months' time was enough for them to go back and forth between Limitless Palace and Tiangang sect. After not being together for a long time, the two of them also enjoyed such a relaxing time. He Mu didn't know what was going on and followed Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang not far away. Looking at the route, it was obvious that they weren't going back to Tiangang sect. He didn't know where the young master and young madam were going, but he had always been wherever the young master was, so it didn't matter where the goal was. The three beasties obviously didn't want to disturb Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, so they were always with He Mu. What's more, they could only be bullied by their master usually, but now they could bully He Mu. This feeling was really good. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen went on a scenic tour and were extremely happy. Limitless Palace. After Gu Taihong returned from the assessment competition, he immediately told the news of Bailey Hongzhuang to Yu Linfeng. After hearing Gu Taihong's description, Yu Linfeng's eyes also revealed a bit of surprise. You said that Bailey girl is the sweetheart of Tiangang sect's young sect master? Gu Taihong nodded. Yes, it is said that Miss Bailey is Di Beichen's fiancée. Di Beichen went to the assessment competition specifically to pick up Bailey Hongzhuang, and Di Beichen didn't hide his love for Miss Bailey in everyone's eyes. That look, it was obvious that he wanted to announce it to the world. Recalling the situation at that time, Gu Taihong explained the situation in detail. Di Beichen's approach was tantamount to publicly acknowledging Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. As the young lord of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen naturally did things after careful consideration. Since he did so, it proved that he had made up his mind to marry Bailey Hongzhuang. This news surprised everyone. After all, almost everyone thought that Han Xiling and Di Beichen were a couple. Even though Di Beichen brought a woman to Tiangang sect 2 years ago and this news was known to many people, most people did not take this matter to heart. This was because it was impossible for an ordinary woman to truly marry Di Beichen. It was precisely because no one had paid attention to it that everyone found it inconceivable when they saw Di Baichen announce it to the world. Yu Linfeng looked lazy and casual. His eyes flickered. I know Di Baichen. He's a good young man. As the young master of Tiangang sect, Di Baichen has always been the focus of everyone's attention. He had also noticed that this young man's strength and will were extremely good. Di Baichen had always been very diligent in his cultivation, and had never had any bad habits. Although he inexplicably left Tiangangzong 5 years ago, he came back later and resolved a lot of troubles in a swift and decisive manner. That swift and decisive manner was very similar to him. He also felt that Sita Yan had found a very good successor. However, he did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would be Di Baichen's sweetheart. However, this did not seem to be a bad thing. He had a good impression of Tiangang sect. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really with Di Baichen, then the distance between Limitless Palace and Tiangang sect would be much closer. Bailey girl chose to enter Tiangang sect. Did you tell her to come to Limitless Palace? Chapter 1679. I have already revealed it to Miss Bailey. I believe that with Miss Bailey's intelligence and wisdom, she will definitely understand. Gu Taihong spoke slowly. At that time he noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang knew all of this. Yu Linfeng nodded. In that case it's fine. Go and investigate the process of how Bailey girl and Di Baichen met. He was really curious about the disciple he had chosen. In the ruins, Bailey Hongzhuang's performance had always been very good. Whether it was her perception, potential or endurance, they were all much better than ordinary cultivators. Just the relationship between her and the Lan family had already surprised him. He had already learned from Bailey Hongzhuang that she had been stranded in a small empire. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang, who grew up in a small empire, should not have had the opportunity to know Di Baichen. However, his disciple was really not an ordinary person. Even if the Lan family had taken away her colorful divine pearl, she had become the wife of the young sect master of Tiangang sect and had him as her master. He suddenly realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was a very lucky person. Yes. Gu Taihong bowed. After seeing that Yu Linfeng had no other orders, he left. After Mo Yunjue returned to Shitian Pavilion, his subordinates told him about the important things that had happened in the past 2 years. In Shitian Pavilion, different positions had different authorities. The most important authority was naturally in the hands of Mo Yunjue. Since Mo Yunjue participated in the assessment competition, Shitian Pavilion had been accepting ordinary tasks. However, for some very difficult and involved many tasks, they had to wait for the young master to come back and ask for instructions before they could make a decision. As soon as Mo Yunjue returned to Shitian Pavilion, he fell into a busy state. He had stayed in the assessment competition for a long time. The matters of Shitian Pavilion had piled up like a mountain. Speaking of which, participating in the assessment competition was the most willful thing he had done so far. However, it was all worth it. Being able to spend so much time with Hongzhuang was already the best thing that could happen to him. Young Master, Tiangang sect's young master Di Baichen has also issued a mission. When Mo Yunjue, who was originally indifferent, heard the 3 words Di Baichen, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and he looked sharply at the speaker. What mission did Di Baichen issue? Feeling Mo Yunjue's sharp gaze, the cultivator could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then, he immediately handed the letter to Di Baichen. Di Baichen opened the letter. The content was simple. Di Baichen confirmed that Lan Yunxiao and his wife were imprisoned in the Yu clan. He hoped that they could help him find out where they were imprisoned. After seeing Lan Yunxiao's name, Mo Yunjue's expression couldn't help but change. The Lan clan had never interacted with Tiangang sect. It was very strange that Di Baichen suddenly wanted to investigate the Lan clan's situation. However, Mo Yunjue quickly thought of the jade pendant on Bailey Hongzhuang's chest. Di Baichen Lan clan, Hongzhuang Lan clan's keepsake. Mo Yunjue's mind quickly flashed with these keywords. Soon, his deep black eyes gradually flashed with understanding. However, he was still shocked. As the young master of Shirtian Pavilion, he had access to countless information. Often, he would only need to look at a few keywords to know the truth. Chapter 1680. Since even Di Baichen couldn't find out, it meant that the Yu clan had sealed this information very tightly. The matter of Lan Yunxiao and his wife was very sensational, but the Lan clan had sealed the information very well. Almost no one knew about it except for a few people who were very well informed. Lan Yunxiao and his wife's daughter was forcefully robbed of the rainbow pearl and was on the verge of death. The instigator was Lan Yunxiao's elder brother, Lan Jingquang. Currently, the Lan clan's proudest young cultivator was Lan Qingyan, but those who knew the truth were somewhat disdainful, because the reason why Lan Qingyan was able to achieve such results was undoubtedly through plundering her younger sister's things to reach this step. However, Lan Qingyan obviously didn't care about this. These years, as Lan Qingyan's strength grew stronger, her attitude also became more and more arrogant, faintly causing some people to be dissatisfied. However, Lan Qingyan's strength and talent were indeed shocking. Even if some people were dissatisfied, they wouldn't say it out loud, because no one was willing to offend a strong opponent. The Yu clan had actually imprisoned Lan Yunxiao and his wife. Once this news spread, the entire aristocratic world would be shocked. Lan Yunxiao and his wife had disappeared for many years. Ever since that incident, they had disappeared without a trace. No one would have thought that they were actually imprisoned by the Yu clan. Di Baichen cared so much about Lan Yunxiao and his wife. Obviously, this was an extremely important matter to him. In addition, Hong Zhuang had the Lan clan's jade pendant. From how much Hong Zhuang cared about the jade pendant, he could determine that Hong Zhuang was related to the Lan clan. Hong Zhuang wasn't General Bailey's daughter. This was something he already knew. He remembered that Hong Zhuang had always been an extremely famous waste in Fengbo country. The reason she became a waste was because her dantian was broken. It was because her dantian was broken that Hong Zhuang couldn't cultivate and led such a miserable life. Lan Yunxiao and his wife's daughter was forcefully robbed of the rainbow pearl by the Yu clan. Her dantian was destroyed and she was on the verge of death. Lan Yunxiao and his wife had to beg the Yu clan for help when they were walking. Once all these things were connected, Mo Yunjua already knew the truth. However, he had never thought that Hong Zhuang's real identity would be like this. At this moment, Mo Yunjua finally understood why Hong Zhuang would reveal such an expression when he looked at the jade pendant and asked if Hong Zhuang was related to the Lan family. With Hong Zhuang's identity, once her true identity was exposed, it would cause a lot of problems. Lan Jingquang and the Yu clan might even try to kill him. It was because of this that Hong Zhuang was so wary of him. This was not because Hong Zhuang did not trust him, but because this matter involved too many things. After understanding this, Mo Yunjua could not help but feel guilty. He did not know the reason behind this, but he felt that Hong Zhuang did not trust him enough. This was really wrong. However, Mo Yunjua could not help but feel sorry for Bailey Hong Zhuang. Hong Zhuang's past was already very tragic. He never thought that her real identity would be even more pitiful. He clearly knew that after this incident, many people lamented how pitiful the child who had her rainbow pearl stolen was. She was supposed to be a genius, but because of this persecution she lost her life. Chapter 1681. Mo Yunjua's eyes became colder and colder as he thought of what Hong Zhuang had suffered all these years. Hong Zhuang's suffering was all because of the Yu clan and Lan Jingquang's family. These bastards were really despicable. They even had the heart to hurt an infant. Moreover, Hong Zhuang was Lan Jingquang's younger brother's daughter. Lan Jingquang's family was worse than pigs and dogs. Damn it! Mo Yunjua clenched his fists. His handsome and cold face was filled with murderous intent. These bastards actually dared to treat Hong Zhuang like this. He would make them pay a heavy price for what they had done in the past. Seeing Mo Yunjua's sudden expression, the cultivators of Shirtian Pavilion couldn't help but be surprised. They hadn't seen their young master with such an expression for a long time. Every time their young master showed such an expression, It meant that someone was going to be unlucky. Could it be the Tiangang sect's young sect master Di Beichen? Everyone kept thinking. After all, this letter belonged to Di Beichen. Now that they knew that Di Beichen was their young master's love rival, it was normal for them to have conflicts. Seeing their young master's angry expression, could it be that their young master had a direct confrontation with Di Beichen? Thinking of this, the cultivators of Shirtian Pavilion became excited. They were all people who wished for the world to be in chaos. For a long time, there had never been a woman who could move their young master's heart. Now that their young master finally found a woman he liked, they naturally couldn't let her go. Go and check on the Yu clan for me. Check if the Yu clan has a dungeon or some other secret place. Mo Yunjua's voice was heavy. Since Di Beichen had asked them to investigate this matter, then Di Beichen must have confirmed that Hong Zhuang's parents were still alive and had been imprisoned by the Yu clan all these years. As soon as he thought about how the Yu clan had harmed Lan Yunxiao's family to such an extent, they even imprisoned them, he was unable to restrain his anger. At this moment he finally understood why Hong Zhuang was so desperate to cultivate. Back then in the ruins, how dangerous was the inheritance. Even he had fainted under that kind of pressure, but Hong Zhuang had persevered. Her perseverance was simply astonishing. From the looks of it, Hong Zhuang was doing her best to increase her strength. That was because she had to increase her strength in order to save her parents. Thinking of Hong Zhuang's usual indifferent appearance, it was hard to imagine that she was under so much pressure. The more Mo Yunjua thought about it, the more he felt that what he had done was not enough. Hong Zhuang had suffered so much in her heart. He was afraid that other than Di Beichen, no one else knew about it. He would do his best to help Hong Zhuang. Only by rescuing Hong Zhuang's parents as soon as possible could Hong Zhuang be at ease. Hearing Mo Yunjua's words, the Shirtian Pavilion's cultivators were a little surprised. Why was he suddenly connected to the Yu clan? Their young master had never been in contact with the Yu clan. However, they had always known how powerful their young master was. The moment their young master gave the order, they didn't think about anything else and immediately retreated. They didn't need to ask for any reason. All they needed to do was to get an accurate answer as soon as possible. The Shirtian Pavilion's investigation would definitely not allow any mistakes. Chapter 1682. Go and investigate the Lan family's Lan Yunxiao's matter. Investigate it carefully and bring me all the useful information. Mo Yunjua's handsome brows knitted tightly. At that time he only knew a little about this matter, but he wasn't clear enough. Now that he knew that this matter was related to Hong Zhuang, he naturally had to investigate it thoroughly. He had to understand everything that had happened in order to know how to help Hong Zhuang to the greatest extent. This subordinate obeys. The man bowed and immediately walked out. As long as it was something the young master instructed them to do, they wouldn't have any doubts. After everyone left, Mo Yunjua looked at the bright moon outside the window. His eyes flickered with cold killing intent. This group of people who were worse than beasts actually dared to do such an unforgivable thing to Hong Zhuang. He would definitely make them pay the price. After thinking carefully, Mo Yunjua suddenly understood why Di Beichen would let Hong Zhuang participate in the assessment alone. Obviously, they already knew about the mystery of Hong Zhuang's birth long before the assessment started. Di Beichen had probably been investigating this matter all this time. According to the information from his subordinates, Di Beichen had already found the Heaven Splitter Tower for some time. However, because he wasn't in the Heaven Splitter Tower, he didn't respond to this mission. This meant that Di Beichen had always been concerned about Hong Zhuang. He had always been busy with Hong Zhuang's matters. Hong Zhuang participated in the assessment to increase her strength, while Di Beichen took advantage of this time to think of a way to save Hong Zhuang's parents. However, because the Yu clan was too secretive, Di Beichen had never been able to find out the exact location of the Lan family's parents. As a medical family, the Yu clan's strength couldn't be underestimated. They were far more powerful than ordinary cultivation families. For so many years, many seriously ill cultivators had sought the Yu clan's help. It was precisely because of this that the Yu clan could be said to have disciples all over the world. Even if Di Baichen was the Tiangang sect's young sect leader, it would not be easy for him to deal with the Yu clan. Therefore, Di Baichen had his hands and feet tied. He could only think of a way to save Lan Yunxiao and his wife without disturbing the Yu family. As long as Lan Yunxiao and his wife were rescued, everything else would become much simpler because they wouldn't have any more worries. Although Tiangang sect's strength was strong, they were not as good as Shitian Tower in terms of intelligence. The Shitian Pavilion's information network could be said to have covered the entire Shangxian continent. As long as it was information they wanted, they would definitely be able to find it. However, the Yu family's roots were so complicated. Adding on the fact that Lan Yunxiao was originally an extremely famous figure in the Shangxian continent, they would definitely do it secretly if they wanted to imprison Lan Yunxiao. Therefore, it would take a certain amount of time to investigate all of this. Similarly, they couldn't investigate this matter personally. They could only find out from the mouths of the Yu clan members. It was obviously impossible to find out such a secretive topic in a short period of time. However, with their methods, they would definitely be able to obtain this information after spending a period of time. Thinking of this, Mo Yunjue decided to send a letter back to Di Baichen. He wanted to let Di Baichen know his attitude and not act blindly without thinking. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen went on a scenic tour. They were very happy. Occasionally, they would play around like an ordinary couple. No one would have thought that Di Baichen was the Tiangang sect's famous young sect leader. Chapter 1683. Under such a playful situation, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were very happy every day. For them, to be able to live happily together and watch the clouds roll by was the happiest life. However, they couldn't have such a life now. This was because they still had too many things to do. Only after completing everything that needed to be done would they be able to live such a life. There were some responsibilities that they had to bear. Such happy days pass very quickly. Unknowingly, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen had arrived at the boundary of Limitless Palace. Not far ahead is Limitless Palace, Di Baichen introduced while holding Bailey Hongzhuang with his right hand and pointing to the mountains in front with his left hand. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked ahead. Previously, there was a dense mountain range and she couldn't see the existence of the sect at all. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't find it strange. Without thinking, she knew that this was Limitless Palace's trick, just like Tiangang sect. In this way, only cultivators who knew where Limitless Palace was would go there. Ordinary people wouldn't find it at all. How are we going to go in later? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichen doubtfully. This wasn't Tiangang sect. Di Baichen couldn't remove this enchantment, so how were they going to go in? Di Baichen's lips curled into a devilish smile. Although we can't see the situation of Limitless Palace here, the disciples guarding the gate can see us. We just need to ask them to pass the message. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, he often ran between various sections. He was very familiar with this kind of situation. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her beautiful face was filled with a beautiful smile. I see. The enchantment after 1,000 years had improved a lot compared to 1,000 years ago. It was very convenient. Hey Mu, follow, Di Baichen suddenly said. Previously, because he wanted to be alone with Hongzhuang, He Mu and the three beasts had been keeping a certain distance from them. Now that they were about to enter Limitless Palace, He Mu should also appear. Otherwise, they would be trapped outside Limitless Palace later. Hearing Di Baichen's words, He Mu quickly appeared beside Di Baichen. Yes, young master. Seeing He Mu appear, Di Baichen nodded. The three beasts then continued to move forward. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at He Mu and the three beasts were getting along with each other, and her beautiful eyes were filled to the breast. It had to be said that having He Mu by Di Baichen's side was really an excellent thing. Di Baichen, have you been to Limitless Palace before? Seeing Di Baichen's familiar look, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. In the past, I came here with my master. However, I only came here once, so I'm not familiar with it. Di Baichen said slowly. Between the various sects, other than their mortal enemies, most of the other sects had dealings with each other. Many times, the various sects would organize some competitions to promote the enthusiasm of their disciples. Only in a competitive environment, cultivators would be able to work harder. This was because every once in a while the various sects would organize some competitions. Especially those sects that had a close relationship with each other, they would organize it together. Tiangang sect and Limitless Palace weren't very close, but their relationship wasn't bad. Chapter 1684. Not long after, Di Beichen stopped his footsteps and spoke to the mountain in front of him. Tiangang sect's Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang are here to see the palace master. Please pass on the message. Following Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the barrier in front of her suddenly disappeared. A towering mountain appeared in front of her. On top of the mountain, a golden palace stood impressively. Looking at the style of the palace, Bailey Hongzhuang could recognize that this was Limitless Palace. The ruins in the small world also had the same style. Although the size and layout were different, the style was extremely similar. Just like how every cultivator had a certain style, the things they did also had the same characteristics. Young Master D, please wait a moment. We will pass on the message immediately. The disciples guarding the mountain gate of Limitless Palace bowed when they saw Di Beichen. They didn't dare to be negligent at all. Many thanks. Di Beichen smiled faintly. One of the disciples guarding the mountain gate quickly walked towards the top of Limitless Palace. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen's reputation was extremely resounding. However, they didn't expect that Di Beichen would suddenly come to Limitless Palace. It really surprised them. No matter what, he couldn't be negligent. He had to immediately report this matter to the palace master. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen calmly waited at the same place. They believed that the palace master would definitely meet them. Only Heimu stood at the same place in puzzlement. He didn't understand why the young master and young madam would suddenly come to Limitless Palace. In his impression, although Tiangang sect and Limitless Palace had a friendly relationship, they didn't have frequent interactions. The young master had never said that he was coming to Tiangang sect. Now that he suddenly appeared here, it was a bit strange. Moreover, from the looks of it, the young madam was also very interested in Limitless Palace. But why did they come here? The three beasties' gaze also fell on Limitless Palace's building. They naturally knew the purpose of their master coming here. They only hoped that their master could become the successor of Limitless Palace. That would be the best. They understood Gu Taihong's intention when the assessment had ended. No matter what, Master must make a trip to Limitless Palace. Not long after, the disciple who went to inform Di Beichen came back. He bowed to Di Beichen and said, "Young Master D, Miss Bailey, the palace lord invites you." Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang cupped their hands towards the disciple who was guarding the mountain gate. Then they slowly walked towards the top of Limitless Palace. After Di Beichen and his group left, the disciples guarding the mountain gate couldn't help but talk. I wonder why the young sect master of Tiangang sect suddenly came to our place. I don't know. I've never heard of this before. However, I have heard before that the young lord of Tiangang sect is powerful and handsome. Today it is really extraordinary. The woman beside Di Beichen is also very outstanding, but I seem to have heard her name somewhere before. It sounds very familiar. A man frowned. When he heard the name, he felt that he had heard it before. But after thinking for a long time, he couldn't remember when he had heard it. Bailey Hongzhuang, it seems to be the name of the first cultivator in this assessment. That's right. It's her. Chapter 1685. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen slowly walked towards the top of Limitless Palace. If anyone was here, they would notice that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen seemed to be walking very slowly. However, their speed was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already arrived at Limitless Palace. In their line of sight, a magnificent hall appeared in their line of sight. Compared to the other sects which were majestic and astonishing, Limitless Palace gave people a special kind of beauty and charm which left a deep impression on people. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a shallow smile. At this moment, looking at Limitless Palace in front of her, she had a very familiar feeling. Di Beichen noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be very happy. His eyebrows were also filled with a touch of joy. As long as Hongzhuang was happy, he would be happy. With the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, the gaze of Limitless Palace's disciples fell on them. Limitless Palace's management had always been strict. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter. Therefore, when the disciples saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the 3 people and 3 beasts, they couldn't help but be surprised. Who are they? Why did they appear in Limitless Palace? I don't know. They are not the cultivators that Elder Gu recruited this time. That man seems to be the young sect master of Tiangang sect. I have seen him before when he came to the sect with the sect master of Tiangang sect. Among the cultivators present there were people who had seen a lot. They immediately recognized Di Beichen's identity. As Di Beichen's identity was revealed, it set off a huge uproar among the Limitless Palace's disciples. He is the young and promising young sect master of Tiangang sect? Then could the woman beside him be Han Xiling? Hearing Han Xiling's name, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression couldn't help but change a little. In the end, Han Xiling died in her hands. Di Beichen obviously knew about this news. However, ever since Di Beichen brought her back from the assessment competition, Di Beichen never mentioned anything about Han Xiling. Seeing that Di Beichen didn't mention it, she naturally wouldn't mention it. She was afraid that Di Beichen already knew the reason behind Han Xiling's death. Because he didn't want the situation to become awkward, Di Beichen never mentioned it. However, she believed that after going to Tiangang sect, Han Hongyi would definitely ask this question first. To Di Beichen she would tell the truth, but to Han Hongyi she would not. Because she wouldn't give Han Xian any reason to attack her. Just when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at Limitless Palace and were thinking about where to meet Yu Linfeng, a familiar figure appeared in their line of sight. Young Sect Master Di, Miss Bailey, you're here. Gu Taihong's face was filled with a thick smile. After he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen came to Limitless Palace together, he immediately rushed over. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang understood his meaning. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang came so quickly. It was really satisfying. Gu Taihong bowed to Di Beichen. Although he was older than Di Beichen's status was much higher than him. Elder Gu. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to Gu Taihong. Di Beichen's status was unusual, but she was just an ordinary disciple in front of Gu Taihong. Chapter 1686. Gu Taihong was shocked. Bailey Hongzhuang was the young palace master of Limitless Palace. How could she bow to him? Although this was only the second time he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he had been following the palace master for a long time. He understood the palace master's personality. Since the palace master had decided to let Bailey Hongzhuang be the successor of Limitless Palace, this decision would not change. The palace master was a mysterious figure in Shangxian continent. As long as the palace master made a decision, there would never be any problems. Even though the palace master seemed to do as he pleased when making a decision, as if he never cared about it, but in reality, every decision he made was carefully considered. Since the palace master chose Bailey Hongzhuang, there must be a reason for it. With regards to the palace master's decision, he only had one thought: obey. Seeing Gu Taihong's action, Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked for a moment. She couldn't help but ask, Elder Gu, what are you doing? Gu Taihong shook his head. You can't bow to me. Di Beichen understood after seeing Gu Taihong's attitude. Gu Taihong was an important figure in Limitless Palace. Other than Palace Master Yu, Gu Taihong's position was the highest. However, Gu Taihong didn't dare to accept Hongzhuang's bow. Just from this it was enough for him to judge many things. It seemed that Hongzhuang was right. Palace Master Yu really intended to let Hongzhuang be the young Palace Master of Limitless Palace. Otherwise, Gu Taihong wouldn't have such an attitude. He Mu was stunned after seeing Gu Taihong's attitude. Could it be that Elder Gu knew the young madam's identity and did this? Although many people already knew that the young madam and young master were in love, everyone thought that the young madam was young master's fiancée. Logically speaking, Elder Gu wouldn't be like this. When the cultivators of Limitless Palace saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they saw. Elder Gu was the elder with the highest position in Limitless Palace. Why would she not dare to accept Bailey Hongzhuang's salute? This was a little too strange. Is that woman in white Han Xiling? Even if she's Han Xiling, Elder Gu doesn't need to be so courteous, right? I don't think it's Han Xiling. I heard that Han Xiling likes to wear green clothes, not white. It can't be her. Who is this woman? His status is actually so high. The disciples looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. They had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang before. In addition, the cultivators who participated in the assessment had all returned to their respective clans and were not in Limitless Palace. Therefore, no one in Limitless Palace knew Bailey Hongzhuang. Since you're already here, why don't we go and see the Palace Lord first? Gu Taihong's face was brimming with a warm and amiable smile as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked slowly. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen nodded. That's good. They came here today to see Palace Lord Yu. Only after seeing Palace Lord Yu, they could decide on their next plan. Gu Taihong nodded slightly and immediately led Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen inside. Chapter 1687. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others disappeared from their sight, the cultivators of Limitless Palace were in an uproar. Forget about the young master of Tiangang's sect. That white-robed girl is really a big shot. I rarely see Elder Gu being so respectful to someone. It's as if she's a very important person. As far as I know, the most outstanding girl in the younger generation is Lan Qingyan from the Lan family. Could that white-robed girl be Lan Qingyan? Stop joking. No matter who that white-robed girl is, she's definitely not Lan Qingyan. Why? You'll know after staying in Limitless Palace for a long time. The Palace Lord has never liked the Lan family. There has never been a cultivator from the Lan family in our Limitless Palace. This news is considered a publicly acknowledged secret in our Limitless Palace. It's best if you don't mention the Lan family. Hearing this, a surprised expression appeared on the faces of the disciples. They didn't know there was such a thing. It seemed that they had to be careful not to mention this aspect in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind Gu Taihong as they walked in Limitless Palace. The entire Limitless Palace was pale gold in color. Every decoration was meticulously done. At a glance, it gave off a beautiful feeling. Although it was dazzling, it gave off a sense of approachability. It gave off a strange feeling, but one couldn't help but admit that it gave off a good impression. Wow, the environment here is so similar to the ancient ruins. Xiao Hei couldn't help but sigh. Thinking back to when she first entered the ancient ruins in the small world, her mind was shocked. She didn't expect that after coming to Limitless Palace, she would realize that the decorations were very similar. This should be Palace Lord Yu's style. It's beautiful. Baisher looked around happily. When his master entered the ancient ruins, he was in the midst of breaking through and didn't see everything in the ancient ruins. After that, he kept listening to Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai talking about the various things that happened at that time. He couldn't see it with his own eyes, so he felt a little depressed. He regretted that he had to break through during that time, and missed such a good opportunity to fight side by side with his master. He didn't expect to see this scene in Limitless Palace. Although it wasn't an ancient ruin, he could roughly understand the situation in the ancient ruins. Limitless Palace's layout is really special. It makes one yearn for it, Xiao Bai said with a smile. The buildings of each sect gave people a different feeling. Tiangang Zone was more shocking, majestic and bright, showing justice and atmosphere. On the other hand, Limitless Palace gave off a sense of elegance, rigor, charm and solemnity. Looking at the scene in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but think of her master. A man like her master, this was really in line with his style. Limitless Palace was very big. Even with Gu Taihong leading the way, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others still had to walk for a long time before arriving at Limitless Palace's conference hall. When they reached the entrance of the meeting hall, Gu Taihong smiled and said, "Young Sect Master D, Miss Bailey, the Palace Lord is here." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. As Gu Taihong opened the door of the meeting hall, she and Di Beichen walked in together. Before entering, Di Beichen gave Heimu a look. Heimu immediately understood and stayed outside the meeting hall. Chapter 1688. Discussion Hall. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked in, they saw that the place was still covered in a faint golden color. It was very spacious and bright, and it felt very comfortable. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were obviously not in the mood to pay attention to this. Their gazes fell on the white figure at the front of the discussion hall. They saw Yu Linfeng wearing a white robe. His elegant and handsome face had an elegant and calm smile. His calm expression was full of wisdom and indifference. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang had only seen a wisp of Yu Linfeng's spiritual sense in the ruins. Now that she saw Yu Linfeng in person, she only felt that he was extraordinarily handsome. So far, she had seen many men with extraordinary looks in this world. For example, Di Beichen was handsome and not annoying. Mo Yunjue was deep and resolute. Gong Shaoqing was cold and icy, and Dong Fengyu was sunny and charming. However, Yu Linfeng gave people the same feeling as them. His whole body exuded a kind of elegance and grace. His handsome face was gentle and calm, as if he was calm and collected. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, he would not bat an eyelid. Perhaps only Yu Linfeng with his strength and experience could have this kind of feeling. No matter who it was, they would have to admit that Yu Linfeng was an extremely charming man. After Yu Linfeng saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, his calm and collected face slowly raised a trace of a smile. Previously, when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang in the ruins, he felt that his disciple's appearance was extremely outstanding. Ordinary men simply could not match her. Now that he saw Di Beichen standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt that the two were extremely compatible. Standing together, they were a pair of jade. He had seen Han Xiling before, but Han Xiling and Di Beichen didn't match well when they stood together. This was because Han Xiling was not good enough for Di Beichen. "Greetings, Palace Lord Yu." Di Beichen took the lead and bowed to Yu Linfeng. Although he hadn't met Yu Linfeng many times, Yu Linfeng was a famous figure in the Shangxian continent. In his heart, he greatly admired Yu Linfeng. The fact that Yu Linfeng had reached this point was already a legend. Many people were curious and admired him. He had never thought that he would meet Yu Linfeng under such circumstances. The fate in this world was truly magical. "Greetings, Master." Bailey Hongzhuang bowed respectfully. Ever since she received Yu Linfeng's inheritance in the ruins, Yu Linfeng was already her master. Regardless of whether she would become the successor of Limitless Palace, Yu Linfeng would always be her respected master. "Young Sect Master D, I never thought that I would meet you today." Yu Linfeng smiled faintly. He didn't have the majesty and pressure of other sect masters. Instead, he was like a spring breeze, giving people an indescribable feeling of comfort. This junior also never thought of it. Di Beichen cupped his hands. If it wasn't for Hongzhuang telling him, he wouldn't have believed that such a thing would happen. Yu Linfeng's gaze turned to Bailey Hongzhuang. "Little girl Bailey, your results in the assessment competition surprised me." He had long felt that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't bad. As long as she worked hard, her future would be limitless. However, he never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would give him such a surprise in the assessment competition. It was truly shocking. Chapter 1689. After cultivating for such a long time on the stairway to heaven, her strength was able to break through again and again. After obtaining the rainbow pearl, her strength increased again. With the leap in strength, whether it was hunting monsters or dealing with cultivators, it was much easier than before. Moreover, after integrating with the rainbow pearl, she discovered the magical aspect of the rainbow pearl. It was no wonder that the Lan family valued the cultivators who possessed the rainbow pearl so much. This was a special inheritance that belonged to the Lan family. After obtaining the rainbow pearl, not only was the rainbow origin energy stronger than ordinary origin energy, but the cultivation speed was also much faster than usual. Under such an increase, the cultivator's strength would definitely be stronger than ordinary cultivators. The reason why Lan Qingyan could achieve such results today was inseparable from the rainbow pearl. Even if a cultivator with average cultivation talent obtained the rainbow pearl, his strength would be able to catch up with a genius cultivator. If it was a highly talented cultivator, his cultivation speed was simply unattainable by ordinary cultivators. She did not know how Lan Qingyan's cultivation talent was, but since Lan Qingyan could achieve such results, her talent should not be bad. Yu Linfeng glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's body was surrounded by a special energy that prevented others from detecting her cultivation, he could still feel a little from Bailey Hongzhuang's aura. Compared to when he first saw her in the ruins, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had obviously increased by a lot. The increase in strength was much higher than he had imagined. Even with the help of the rainbow pearl, there would not be such a huge increase in strength. After discovering this, Yu Linfeng was also a little surprised. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was more outstanding than he had imagined. Her talent was probably even more powerful. He also understood that any cultivator who could possess the seven-colored divine pearl would have outstanding talent. Bailey Hongzhuang's strength could increase to such a level in such a short period of time. If it was not due to other opportunities, then it was due to some special means. However, he did not intend to find out about these. Everyone would have their own secrets. Although he and Bailey Hongzhuang had not known each other for long, he could already see through Bailey Hongzhuang's character. His eyesight had always been very accurate. Just from Bailey Hongzhuang's current conversation he could tell. It seemed that Di Beichen's eyesight was also very good. He could find his disciple in the vast sea of people, and did not care about Bailey Hongzhuang's original identity at all. This was a pair of discerning eyes. What he hated most were those fellows who talked about equal social status. You don't need to be so humble. How much I have helped you. Yu Linfeng's. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's, but she did not answer him. The reason why her strength could increase so much was partly because of the inheritance she had received in the ancient ruins, and partly because of the existence of the Door of Darkness. The time in the desert world was much longer than the outside world. She would go to the desert world to cultivate whenever she had something to do. As a result, her cultivation time was much longer than ordinary cultivators. Moreover, not only could she increase her cultivation in the desert world, but she could also increase her strength and speed. If her cultivation speed was not fast enough in such a situation, it would be terrible. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.